the way the language, we'll cover it later. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've got 3:02, so we'll call this work session of the Enterprise City Council to order. Let the record show that all council members are present. As you all know, we have decided to gather a little early today to allot a couple hours to dive into this comprehensive plan draft that KPS has been working on. Hopefully everybody's gotten the opportunity to at least familiarize yourself with the general concepts of what we'll be discussing tonight. But I will turn it over to Barry. You got it?
Thank you, gentlemen. Thomas was going to be here to do this presentation, but went home ill last night and is still out today. So I'm going to do my best to fill in for him. This is his project. He's been working very closely with Jason, with KPS, and you've gotten a copy of the draft, what they have. What I'm going to quickly do is turn it over to Jason and let him go through. I think he has some points to go through just to get you familiar with what's in the plan and to have an informal discussion about some things that you might like to see us do a deeper dive into, or things that you like, or things that you want us to head in a different direction. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, Jason, to you.
Thanks, Barry. Have a presentation. Some of this we looked at back in October, so I'm going to quickly go through anything that we've reviewed before, but just to kind of reinforce with you what's in the plan, what's new since the October presentation, as a springboard to have a discussion about how you'd like to see the plan evolve from this point. So, early on in the process, back in July, we had the community meeting to develop some, get an understanding what the community feels are sort of the most pressing issues that the community needs to take on, the city needs to take on for the future, and those were transportation infrastructure, economic development, parks and recreation, and cultural activity in schools. And that's, of course, reflected in the visioning section of the plan.
Jason,
yes.
To the extent possible, can you speak in the mic so they can hear us online?
Gotcha. Okay, sure.
So I can hear you.
All right. And then following that portion of the plan is the growth strategy, which hits several key points at a kind of high level. How should the city grow from this point forward? And it reinforces a lot of the activity that's happened, of course, the revitalization that's been going on downtown, as well as the development activity that's happened on Boll-Weevil Circle for many decades and will continue to happen, and encouraging that additional development, particularly around the bypass, happens in a kind of create anchors around the major intersections. But there are also some key intersections outside the circle that have begun to develop with commercial activity, and kind of reinforce those are good places and continue to do that. And here are a few more that may be worthwhile in the future, as you tend to see more residential development out in those areas, both to the south, north, and east of the circle. Residential development, really just a couple of key issues there, and that is making sure that where housing development is proposed, that the density of that housing is suitable to the infrastructure that's in place or that's planned for different parts of the city, that you're not overwhelming the street system with traffic because you're having a lot of really dense housing in different parts of the city, and also that within the circle there are large areas of undeveloped land that are really ripe for residential infill, and because of the infrastructure that's already in place within the circle, it can accommodate a lot of development, both from sewer standpoint, water, traffic, all of that infrastructure is in place, and all that undeveloped land is just letting that infrastructure go relatively untapped. and of course, talked about green infrastructure and recognizing that you have a lot of creeks and floodplain corridors throughout the city. Those are good opportunities for open space, for preserving those to serve as part of the city's stormwater system, and that some of those creeks can be locations for greenways. And when I say greenway, that can mean a lot of different things. Sometimes it's just a linear, natural open space. Some of it's for trails, or it may be locations where there's opportunities for parks. And then annexation, two kind of primary directions for annexation, capturing areas that are likely to develop that will generate revenue for the city, which will give you the ability to expand and improve on your facilities and services. And of course, in areas of the city where there's a lot of growth and you have, for example, housing happening just outside the city limits, be strategic in capturing some of those areas to be able to kind of go back to that issue of managing growth, density of housing in relationship to infrastructure. And of course, utilizing the city's abilities to manage development to protect people's existing investments in neighborhoods and business areas. And sort of the land use plan talked about that back in October. And just to reinforce, it's not a zoning map. It's used as a guide to respond when there are questions about zoning. Someone wants to, comes before the city to request a rezoning. You refer to the zoning or the land use map to be able to communicate your expectations and intentions in terms of where density or where business or where industry, where those areas are intended to go, because that corresponds with your plans for infrastructure. And also, of course, back to the idea of minimizing incompatibility between what's existing and what might be proposed to be able to protect existing investments in people's neighborhoods and business areas, to make sure that the things that get built next door are going to enhance and not create problems for what's already been invested in by the community. Since October, SANE and KPS, we've ironed out and put more detail into the transportation plan. There are a few major recommendations there. Some of those were already known at the beginning, which is complete the widening of Boll Weevil Circle along the southwest and west side of the city. Work from a regional standpoint to get 167 widened to accommodate economic development. Realign County Road 606 to enable the expansion of the airport. Work over time, either through direct city investment or through private development, to interconnect some roadways on the outside of the circle, so that there are alternate routes rather than people having to funnel into the city to get on Boll Weevil Circle to kind of jog over to another one of those exterior roadways, which just jams up more traffic on Boll Weevil Circle, where people are not actually intending to go somewhere on Boll Weevil Circle. They're just getting from one neighborhood to another, or trying to get from their neighborhood to a school. Having some connections on the outside of the circle will alleviate some of that just local traffic having to funnel through Boll Weevil Circle, and ease some of the congestion that's already happening. And as you see continued residential development outside of the circle, minimize the impact of having that additional growth adding congestion onto the circle. And then, of course, in already developed areas on Boll Weevil Circle, particularly on the east and northeast sides of the city, looking at opportunities to improve access management. We know a few locations that are a little bit difficult, either dangerous or there's a lot of congestion. working with ALDOT to improve those, and with the property and business owners in those areas to clean up some of those access conflicts, and to have a very proactive approach to managing access in newly developing areas, particularly on where you're starting to see that development happen on the south side, and then ultimately in the future on the west side of the circle. From a bicycle pedestrian standpoint, I think the focus prioritization of investments should be connecting schools and parks to neighborhoods. And that can be done in strategic locations on some of those spoke roads coming out of downtown out towards the circle. There are not a whole lot of sidewalks outside of downtown. So having some key corridors to focus in on, rather than trying to put sidewalks in every street. You can't do that. It's too expensive. It'll take forever. To look at strategic opportunities to do that. SANE recommends a deeper analysis of that, but from a first blush standpoint within the comprehensive plan, feel that looking at some of those, again, the spoke roads, and looking at how you can increase bicycle and pedestrian accessibility within the circle on a few of those streets would be helpful, but also looking at some off-street paths where you're not as constrained by existing infrastructure that you'll have to go and kind of retrofit, which can be very expensive. Going off-street, you can do that a little bit more prudently in terms of the costs. And again, the idea is to look for opportunities to connect neighborhoods to schools and parks. That's kind of the top goal for making those bicycle and pedestrian improvements. And of course, there are various funding sources that would help to do that: safe routes to school and other transportation funding sources. Water system, of course, Polly and the Water Board really helped to define what the near-term goals are for this and long-term goals for the water system are. Upgrading the water mains in phases. You'll see here represented the red lines on this map, some of the higher priority, and then the blue lines outside the circle being sort of the second phase of improvements that they've identified. Constructing a new well on the Shellfield Road site that was acquired recently, and then sort of the long-term goal would be building an additional storage tank on the north side as part of the high-pressure system. Wastewater, there were a number of outfalls that were identified back in the previous comprehensive plan. Those have been replaced. You'll see those green lines on this map. So the blue lines representing the ones that are still to be done. So carrying over into this plan update are those blue lines representing the outfalls that still need to be updated. Extending the system northward where you're continuing to see a lot of residential development, and then that last bullet is left over from the previous slide. Ignore that one. Community facilities, particularly in the realm of parks, where you're seeing because you're seeing so much residential development in the city, parks are kind of a crucial component of the kind of community services and facilities you need to be thinking about. And we've suggested that you look at maintaining as a goal, maintaining about 8 acres per 1,000 population. You're just shy of that right now. The kind of recommended typical range is somewhere between 6 and 10.5. So kind of threading the needle a little bit at 8 acres is a good, not something that you're going to always hit every year, but it's kind of a guideline to what you want to aspire to. Areas of the city that Parks are primarily located within the circle, especially around around the recreation center, and then a few parks inside the circle. And then, of course, you've got Donaldson and Henderson on the north side. But where you've had over time, where you've seen so much residential growth is on the northeast side. There are no parks. And so looking for sites or different areas of the city where you could, over time, obtain some land to put in some parks to serve those neighborhoods. We just indicated some very general areas where that could happen. There are 3 on the side. We don't recommend that you go try to plant 3 parks, but here are 3 options for you to choose from. And then, of course, as the city grows on the south side, in addition to what's being done to expand Peavy Park, looking at something that will help to serve the west and southwest side of the city, so that that large green circle on the southwest corner of the circle there. And the reason why that's suggested is because of the amount of floodway area. There's a lot of land that is going to be very difficult to build on for houses or businesses. So it would a park in that location would tend to make sense. And we've got included in the plan a lot more detail in terms of what Parks and Recreation Department are planning sort of the near term. So we expanded that out by looking at those kind of that growth goal for the long term and opportunities to build in some future parks to accommodate those underserved areas of the city and those that will tend to grow in the future. Other city facilities. We had a good conversation with the fire department about their needs in terms of emergency response and where they're a little pinched in terms of maintaining good response times. That's primarily on the north side, where the north side station is located adjacent to Old Weevil Circle. With the amount of growth that you're seeing on the north side, either building a new station or relocating the existing Northside Fire Station a little bit further north will help to maintain and improve emergency response times and keep your ISO rating at the good level that it currently is while you are growing the city. And maintaining that ISO rating is going to benefit homeowners in terms of insurance costs. And then a couple of other items that we highlighted are of course, the library is a bit constrained right now. It's a little dated. I think if I look back through the history, this is the 3rd building I think the library's been in, and none of them were designed as libraries. So it's maybe it's time to build a purpose-built library. But of course, you can make improvements to the existing building, and maybe over time there might be some opportunities to expand that facility. But there is definite need in terms of the library to modernize it and create more space for that function. It'd be great to keep that downtown if possible, because it helps to kind of maintain that civic activity, bringing the community into downtown, not necessarily just to go to the shops and restaurants, but to just have the community regularly in downtown, because it's such an important part of the identity of Enterprise. If that can't happen, it would be good to keep it kind of nearby. And of course, there are some city properties west of downtown where the plan mentions are good options if you choose to build a library and move it out from downtown. Those would be reasonable options as well. And then, of course, the building we're in here now, as you grow, your staff needs increase, and you may come to a point where you are out of room. You've done some, you've reinvested in City Hall to make more room, make things more space efficient. But 10, 15 years from now, you may have maxed out the facility. So what do? What are your options? And of course, there are a lot of cities that have split their administrative offices, taking police department, move them into a new space, or let the police department take over City Hall, and then city government moves into a new facility. So those are options to consider. Always good, just like the library, if city government can maintain a presence in downtown, if at all possible. And then we looked at downtown a little bit more closely, and came up with some suggestions in terms of issues that came up during the community meetings, survey, and discussions with staff and with Main Street about downtown. The idea of building some type of park space to serve downtown, because there currently is not one. And that need seems to be felt by a lot of people. And the small parking area, small public parking area, shown number 4 here, could be a good opportunity to create a small downtown park space that would be kind of a center for events. And for example, if you're going to have a Christmas tree lighting ceremony, or you're going to have a concert or a parade, this is kind of a staging ground where the streets themselves become part of the event, which you already do for different downtown events. But this would be kind of could serve as an anchor for that. Then looking at opportunities to improve Main Street and some of the side streets, developing a kind of a long-term plan for what you'd like to do, and the design improvements that you'd like to see there, adding more green space, improving the intersections so that it's easier for people to cross streets, slowing some of the traffic down, some of the turning movements at those intersections. And so we looked at a couple of different options for you to be able to do that, and there's room to do some improvements that will add a little bit of greenery, some trees, plantings, seating areas, and potentially incorporating some bike lanes on Main Street. Of course, that would have to be worked out with ALDOT. And I know that parking is going to be a major concern for the business owners in downtown, as well as the folks who come downtown to shop and eat. But there are opportunities. There's room to accommodate some improvements there without taking a lot of parking, or minimizing the amount of parking that would be taken out. Encouraging more infill development, particularly along Railroad Street. See those areas that are shown in red are, very good opportunities for additional development to serve downtown. Housing in and around downtown is ultimately going to be to benefit the businesses that are downtown. Incentivizing improvements in existing buildings that might take the form of creating a downtown redevelopment authority, having some type of facade grant or loan program to encourage existing building owners to make improvements to their buildings. And then another recommendation that fits downtown but also can be citywide is putting together a wayfinding master plan to plan out the signage that you would put around town to direct visitors to different destinations in Enterprise, whether it's downtown or other locations, some of your major park facilities, the Civic Center, and other key destinations in and around Enterprise. So that for from transportation, infrastructure, community facilities, downtown. That's all stuff that's been added into the document since we met back in October. Our next steps at this point are to, finish out the plan, get it moving in the direction that you like over the next 6 weeks or so, and then schedule it for a hearing before the Planning Commission. If the council would also like to vote on the plan and endorse it, we're happy to assist in that process. The state code merely requires that the Planning Commission vote on it. At that point, it becomes officially adopted. But it's always good to see the council take action on it to endorse it as well. And then we move into the review and updates to the zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations, which we'd like we're targeting the summer to have all of that wrapped up. So at this point, I'd like to hear any questions that you have about what's in the plan, things that you maybe would like to see more emphasis on, or any sort of reactions that you've had to your review of the plan so far.
So let's start with anything that y'all think has not been addressed, and then we'll move, as time permits, which I think time will permit, we can move into some detailed discussion about any of this we wish to talk about. So does anybody have any concerns that KPS, Thomas, and staff have just completely left something out? Everybody comfortable that we're at least touching on the subjects that were contemplated? All right. Well, then, why don't we just dive in then? If did y'all have an agenda beyond?
No, sir. We what I wanted to do was after Jason's through giving his presentation, a couple of things that staff is doing outside of KPS's scope of services. Some things we're doing is we're working with them hand in hand on recommending a building code and the codes for the city. We're looking at, with their input, looking at a 21 code upgrade. We're currently on 09. So they're like every 3 years. So there's a 12, a 15, a 18, a 21. We're fleshing that out. We've had some early discussions with some stakeholders. The Home Builders Association is one that has done a lot of work on the codes and what does it affect as far as building homes. And right now, where we stand, we are looking forward towards staff recommending a 21 adoption of codes, excluding the energy code component of the 21. And the reason for that, there's been a lot of studies on that, and there's components within the energy code, like EV charging stations inside your home, things like that really haven't hit our part of the country yet. And the impact of that could be great onto the cost of building a home in the city, that probably most people are not going to have the benefit of reaping those investments into their home. Now, saying we're not adopting it as our minimum standard does not mean that a resident cannot do that to their home. If they decide they want to put something more stringent in than what we're requiring, they have the option to come in there and do EV charge stations. They want to adopt that 21 energy code, and they want to have their home compliant to 21 energy code. That is perfectly fine to do. The cost difference, talking to Thomas on that, if we adopted the whole energy code and all, could be anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000 increase to the cost of your home to build a home to be compliant compared to what we are currently at now. Excluding just that one little energy code, the number is probably $1,500, which you'll get a lot more bang for the buck in that sense. So we're spending a lot of time with staff. We're looking at all the data we have available. We're leaning heavily on what KPS can give us as far as guidance and what other cities are looking at to make a good recommendation about what to do. We'll also want to have some stakeholder meetings with the contractors in the area, the home builders, and some other, the bankers, the real estate, those kind of people to give us input. Once we know what code makes sense to us, we'd like to do a cheat sheet saying here's what we see the differences between where we are and what we're recommending, and get buy-in, hopefully 100% buy-in from everybody there. Or if not, listen to what their concerns are and see if there's a way that we can find some common ground to move the city forward. And talked to Chief earlier today in department head meeting. Adopting a current code like 21 code will have an impact to our ISO rating. And I don't want to steal anything he might want to say, but he says we do get points for being current on code, and that would be a benefit to the city as well. So I just want you to know we're doing that. We're also reaching out with Public Works. We're doing a minimum standard, like a Public Works manual that will go with our subdivision regulations about what standard buildups of asphalt will be, what standard curbing will be, those things that right now staff is having to deal with those on a one by one type submittal for subdivision plans that we get into staff review. So we want to set some standards so we have a city standard for what would it take to build a subdivision in the city of Enterprise, and everybody's kind of playing on the same level playing field. And then if you've got another idea, we'll be glad to look at it and see if there's something that we could adopt outside of our standard. But we're trying to get those adopted as part of this as well. That's why you see some of the subdivision regulation stuff pushing out into the summer. We're working on that, but it's a pretty heavy lift considering everything else we have going on in the city right now.
All right. Did anybody else have a plan for the rest of this time, or do we just want to go into council discussion now?
I think council discussion would be appropriate, but I'll echo what Barry said on the subdivision part. We did work with outside agencies. Home Builders Association was paramount in getting us some verbiage on things that they had seen throughout the state. And of course, they work to do right by not just their folks, but the end user. One of those things that they highlighted that really had an aha moment for me was, in some of that code for the energy code, it was requiring people to put in charging stations for electric vehicles. And, not a lot of people in Enterprise, Alabama have electric vehicles at this point. So would it make sense to do that when it might add, thousands of dollars to the home, but create no return? And certainly, like Barry said, if they choose to buy an electric vehicle and want to install that, they can at a later time at their own cost. But it's not something that the home builder and ultimately the end user. So we want to encourage people to continue to build in Enterprise. And that was just a good example that jumped out at me.
Yeah, I mean, your last point there, we want to continue to encourage people to build an Enterprise. We have to be mindful of everything we do inside the city is not being done just outside the city. So there is a certain amount of premium a builder will pay to build inside the city. Certainly, currently, one of those is they have to actually be inspected and be held to the standard of the current 2009 code where they build out in the county. And while they're probably legally required to build to the state minimum, which is probably 2018, is it 21 now? But there's no inspection, so there's no enforcement, right? So everything, we just got to be mindful of what we're doing that could potentially drive development outside the city.
Right.
I mean, I assume that's what you were saying there.
Yeah, I mean, we want to be, we want to be. It sounds funny for a city to say that, but we don't want to be bureaucratic. We want to be flexible, and we want to keep the end user in mind and work with developers and ultimately homeowners to do things that create value for them. So, like Barry said, increasing the city's ISO rating impacts every homeowner in town, which impacts your insurance rates. So, you might pay $1,500 more for a home, but your insurance rates might come down as a result of that. If you're also energy efficient and it raises the home price a few $100s, it might lower your electric bill by a few $100s a year. And so over a 20-year or 30-year time that you own your home. These are things that we think could create value. And so we're not just doing them. I think one of you at one point told us to, find the problem with what's going on, and make sure that we're addressing problems and not trying to just adopt the code for the sake of adopting it. So,
yeah. All right. So if nobody else has anything, then we'll go into just some general discussion about what Jason presented. So keep in mind, when we adopt this comprehensive plan, what we all agreed was this wasn't just some exercise in futility that we were doing just to check a box and say, well, we've got a plan. We actually want a working document that we can actually use to drive strategic planning, a vision for the city, a path forward, and something that this council and the next council and the council after that can continue to look at and use as kind of our North Star that says, okay, this is the direction we want the community to go in. So with that being said, we need to make sure that this is what we agree to. So it's important that we have buy-in not only from staff, because largely staff and KPS has drafted this. Obviously, we had input, the community had input, but at some point we're gonna, it's gonna be what it is. So tonight's a good night to have some big picture discussions around what we're thinking. So, I guess I'll just go in the order of my notes here, what Jason talked about. But so one concept he brought up was this infill of residential inside the circle, and more specifically as we get closer and closer to downtown area. And I guess some of that is actually some of them are neighborhoods that have been largely hollowed out, right? And some of it's just areas that have been skipped over. Does anybody have any thoughts of that? And practically speaking, how we see that playing out? Sonia, you have any thoughts on that? I know some of these communities and areas is your district.
I don't know exactly where it is.
Jason, can you?
I heard him say that.
Yeah. Can y'all just expound a little bit on the concept?
yeah. So, as Jason mentioned, a lot of the areas inside the circle, so you've already got infrastructure in place. So, part of his comprehensive plan is talking about extending infrastructure to the north, and that costs money. And so that's a financial burden on the city. Certainly, property taxes over time return some yield on that. But we have a lot of places in town that people have already made an investment, and the city makes an investment. Every time we resurface one of these streets, or we maintain a sewer line, or repair a water line like we're doing in downtown. And so, to some degree, there could be a policy decision that the council might look at to say, how do we encourage people to make an investment inside the circle versus annexing in, 100 acres, into the city limits to build a new subdivision. And that's kind of the juxtaposition.
And it's not necessarily an either or.
No,
we're talking both and here.
That's right. In an ideal world, you'd want both. I mean, people investing outside, bringing things in, all around the city limits. But we happen to have, if I look at it, and I've talked to Barry about this as we've driven around places. Everywhere you drive around town that you have a curb on a street that doesn't have something in front of it there, it's an opportunity lost to either have a residence or a commercial property or something that could be yielding something for the community or to the city.
With very little incremental spend from a city standpoint, because the infrastructure already exists.
Correct. So in that infrastructure, the street's still going to wear out, and we're still going to have to resurface it, as an example.
The sewer line's
water
already in the ground in many
Right.
cases.
Right. So it doesn't cost us a lot more, but we're still losing out on that opportunity to have
A good example is this. We've recently approved the rezone of the out College Street. I mean, that would be an example of some infill inside of the circle.
That's correct. Out of Pistol Drive, College and Pistol Drive. Also, I bring back up that, you can't look at each one of these things as an individual silo. Adding the parks, doing the downtown development, replacing the sidewalks that we've been doing that, currently people couldn't walk on safely. To get to those things where they're rehabbed, we have to look at each one of those areas he identified on that map, and that's what staff's trying to do, is trying to figure out what's keeping people from building back in those areas that are somewhat hollowed out or isolated islands. The issue with the Pistol Drive and College was the connectivity back to College, and able to work with a developer to say they need connectivity back to develop that acreage back there for those homes. So I think there's not a magic silver bullet that will solve all of these, but I think getting particular about each one of those, especially if they're in your district, and having communications with staff and KPS saying, I'd like to do a deeper dive into this one little area and see what we can do, what can we foster. Is it connectivity by trails or by walkways? Is it a park in that area that would grow back? What would be a draw to kind of help fill in those areas? And it may be a combination of several of those things that Jason went through that solve some of these problems. But I think we all realize what Jonathan's saying is that curb is sitting there. We've made the investment in that we don't have a home or we don't have a business sitting on that section of property. We need to fill in those gaps and get those areas filled in.
And all these years it's been sitting there, and we've been going out and putting in new curbs, new sewer lines, new water lines, and building out there, skipping over
That's right.
these curbs and that already exist.
And some of the things that I drove down one of the roads yesterday and saw Big X, and one of the houses that we've been trying to get demoed for a while, that we got into a demo project, and maybe because there's something across the street and someone didn't want to build a home because something was there. So I think we're doing a lot of good things that will help aid in that. But I think we got to dig into those. I think you got a map early in the presentation showing those areas in the city that have undeveloped land that already has the infrastructure in place, the majority of the infrastructure, if not all of it, for those areas to develop up, and helping identify those to the developers in the area and see what we can do to foster growth in those areas.
You asked me a question, like, for instance, and thinking what you're saying, like a lot of the neighborhoods in my district, for instance, we're working on things like the demolition projects or whatever. Attractiveness always draws people, men to women, women to clothes, you name it, right? If it looks good, you gravitate to it, So even we were talking about, it's a section in here about, was it signage? I think I wrote signage, but community image.
Yeah.
Community image, that could help with some of those things too, constant, deeper cleaning up efforts. Maybe, yes, we're doing a demolition project, but we're kind of inviting people to come to say, hey, I want my home demolished. Maybe a closer look at homes or establishments that have just deteriorated. And that's areas, that's space that, what can the city do to take a stance to eliminate that? What powers do we have to be able to say, okay, we haven't heard, or we don't know, what legal right do we have to get rid of, make things look better? Because some stuff is on a corner that could be used for a nice something to put, there to make developers want to invest in the older neighborhoods as well. It's areas.
Yeah, and one thing mentioned in here is a redevelopment authority. Another thing that three of us and Jonathan Mayer learned about recently was the land banking. I'm not saying do either one of those or not do both of them, but there are other vehicles we can use to get all the properties, or at least a significant portion of the properties in an area, into one entity. And then you got that entity making a decision. I mean, have you seen that work, Jason, and other land banking, redevelopment authorities?
Yes.
Give us a real high level view of.
Yes, and I've seen land banking, it can, I've seen it done from a private standpoint. Foundation in Birmingham did that. They focused primarily first on tax delinquent properties because those were kind of the low-hanging fruit.
I think actually in Alabama, it's a requirement. A certain number of properties have to be tax delinquent
Mhm.
before you can create the bank.
Right. And I'm using the term loosely.
Yeah.
So it just might be you're acquiring property,
Yeah.
you know, on one side of it, but then there's the more official, you know, we're technically doing a land bank,
Yeah, I
and so that
understand.
falls into a slightly different category of what you're doing. So from that private sector side, they were doing it from a, you know, they were strategically acquiring property with the intent of 3, 4, 5 years from that point, being able to do some housing investment. So they were land banking, but not sort of
Doing
under
it more in a private.
right. So they weren't doing it kind of in the same way that a municipality might. But I've seen housing authorities do it. It's you're going in and securing properties that you see an opportunity, whether it's typically if you're looking for to do housing or commercial development, somebody else is going to do it, right? So you're just trying to claim some of that property and accumulate it in strategic locations to make it available when the time
Because
comes to that
Right now, you may
private
have
investor.
a fragmented ownership, a lot of
Right.
different owners.
Mm-hmm.
If you can bring it under one umbrella, build critical mass of,
Absolutely.
and now it's all of a sudden valuable
Mhm.
to a private entity
Right.
and to be redeveloped.
Everything that's kind of been discussed before, I just kind of want to point out that it's you're wanting to support the market in investing in those places where you already you as a city already have an investment made, and you are over time continuing to invest and maintain infrastructure. You're not doing it yourself. You're not spending public money to go and build things necessarily. That may be of benefit. You know, we're talking maybe it's a park or a trail or something of that nature. That may be an appropriate city investment in a particular location that would help to make the market go in and invest in an area. It may be making sure that you got the right zoning in place, or some of these areas they're still being farmed. So you know, and they're probably going to stay that way for a few more years. But at some point, that owner is going to say, you know, I don't think I'm going to want to farm this property anymore. I'm right in the middle of the city, and I'm retiring. My kids are not going to want to keep doing this. So having a city policy that says we're going to support development in that location. So if the sons or grandsons come and say we want to rezone to residential to build a subdivision here, the city's going to say yes, we would love to see housing development in that part of town. So from a policy standpoint, it's kind of being supportive of the market making the choice to invest. And there may be some public investments that the city chooses to make because it's going to benefit the interior, you know, inside the circle globally. You know, investing in parks and trails and things of that nature. You're not necessarily going to go build a trail because it's going to make Mr. Smith go build a subdivision, but you're going to do it because it's a good idea from the big picture, and it might then convince somebody to go and build something on one of those undeveloped pieces of property. Code enforcement, land banking, having the right zoning in place. There are all these different tools that 2 or 3 of them might be the right choice to affect this area, and another 2 or 3 might be appropriate in this other location. But it's, I think from the comprehensive plan standpoint, it's about deciding, yes, we think it's a good idea to see development in these areas, and when opportunities arise, we're going to use whatever powers we have to support the market in making decisions to invest in those locations.
So you might have any questions on the infill / redevelopment piece? All right, the next thing that I think he moved to that might be of interest to us was this idea, concept of greenways and parks, and using those for shared pedestrian and bike connectivity between schools and parks and downtown. So can we pull up that map that you had and just have some general discussion around that? I mean, overall, Scotty, starting with you, what were your thoughts on that concept?
Oh, that's great, because I hear that a lot from folks, is that, and my biggest thing on the planning commission is, I mention all the time, sidewalks.
Yeah.
And getting those sidewalks, and I know, Jason, you mentioned it's too cost affordable to try to go back in some areas, but with all these new developments, putting them out and using those spaces. I mean, I've seen railroad tracks out there off of where the Henderson Park is and stuff that would make a great trail bike ride type area connecting all our parks and stuff. But people mentioned trying to get from the high school, getting to schools. Can we get there easy? How can we get there safely, for families, and not only for young kids, but for senior citizens like me, getting around. And it just makes common sense to me to have those connecting points through there around all our parks and our streets in all our districts.
Right.
Greg,
I could see when he mentioned that, it's some areas that just come to mind that you can
see it.
You can really see it.
Yeah, and so when we went and identified these different routes, and they're just very rough. I mean, you couldn't just go and build those right now.
Mm-hmm.
But we tried to look at places where it's there's nothing developed there right now, or there's only development on one side, and this could come in here. There's not anything that's going to have to be demolished in order to build this. These are we've got several locations where people are not going to want to build in this location because it's in a floodplain, or because it's probably a location that would be kind of on the backside of a subdivision if it were to get built there. So the lots are going to back up to it. Maybe there's a slope or something. So we tried to be very strategic in looking at linkages that could be made, because they're not going to be ones that if somebody goes and builds something there, it would fit in. It's not going to conflict with how someone would want to go and build in this location, but would kind of link up with it. And at the same time would connect things that you want to connect. In an example of some of that is, of course, the connecting up to the high school over on this side, or using, suggesting look at the creek and the floodplains over there, acquiring an easement within that area, and really the process that we would suggest is going to a next level of analysis and looking at the feasibility of different routes, setting some priorities on what kind of routes you want to pursue, what's it going to take to build those paths in the locations, and just having a guide to implementing that over time. And there may be some opportunities where developers in certain of those areas would build those connections as part of their subdivision and hook up to a city trail that's being built in that area as well. So it's not always going to be on the city to do that. There may be instances where those get incorporated into subdivision developments.
See, I can see also out there the VA home where that old rail track was, and they're going to put a path there.
Right.
That's a great way of connecting that to Henderson, or where folks can come up and down with the families and stuff.
Absolutely.
And then also with PV Park, with all the bike trails and stuff, those rooftops out there connecting that, straight shot through.
So I would assume that these paths could land anywhere on a spectrum of anywhere from, we just took a bulldozer and went and cleared a path, and we keep the weeds knocked down and keep it semi-natural but improved,
Right.
all the way to a shared pedestrian and bike path with a stripe down the middle, lit with park benches and trash receptacles, and
Right.
I guess that's the
Right.
spectrum we're
The more
talking about,
formal-
right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
so-
Exactly.
And the city has a tool now, don't they? That brown thing that can just go right through, and
like a
I see a
mulcher.
smile that we talked about before.
So,
Never mind.
how practical, and this may be a Glenn question or a Glenn Anneberry question. How practical, like I'm looking at this path that goes from Henderson east, I think that's Herring Creek, is it not? All the way over to the sewage lagoon on Porter Lunsford, and then turns back to the southwest and goes all the way back downtown. All this is in a creek bed, right? And some of those we have outfall lines, and we already have sewage easements. I mean, how practical from both a constructability and use of the land. Obviously, we would have to have legal use of the land. Do we already own the property? Do we already have legal use? I mean, walk us through that.
So I've done a couple projects like this where the last one we did a Forever Wild Trail. We had an old wastewater treatment plant that was decommissioned, and the city had land on the other side of the creek, and we connected that. It was a destination park. Bring your mountain bike, and the intent of that park was to create a space where people could get off the road, do recreational mountain biking in the city limits. So you have to kind of look at what you're intended to do. Are you looking for a form of recreation for park, or are you actually looking for commuting from one side to the other? You got to determine what the need is. What we determined is, it sounds easy to go through and just bulldoze a path and put down a little bit of some kind of surface for people to use, but it is an issue. Those areas are wet and they're marshy, and if you get hurt, what do you do about getting people in and out? What do you do for security for people to go out there and that want a mountain bike and they want to turn their 6-year-old loose to go ride? Keeping the area secured. But the maintenance was an issue. Crossing the creeks becomes a concern just because you get core, wetland issues of clearing trees and getting equipment down those areas. It's a lot more complicated than it sounds on the cuff, but it's definitely something that I would say that if that's something that interests you, we ought to pick an area and at least take it to the next level and see what it would take to take it through fruition, and see if the public is behind something like that. Because it wasn't a lot of money as far as investment into the city. It was a lot of thought, and then we worked with some grant programs, and the Forever Wild, we turned it into a forever, wetland area that the city used kind of as a banking for wetland work, and made good use of property that we would never have been able to develop with the city. But again, that one was for recreation. I think what Jason's tapping into may be a little bit more of commuting from one area to another. So if you're looking at that, the sidewalks off of Main Street, like we're doing down Daleville Avenue, those type of areas.
I actually look at this. I don't know what y'all think, but more other than maybe commuting to maybe kids getting to school would be more recreation in my mind. But I may be wrong. I guess that a lot of that depends on where on the spectrum we decide to go with it.
I'll tell you, when I did the other project, I didn't understand the following that mountain biking group had. They use that facility every week, and it is a draw. people that live outside that community that comes in just to use that park.
I thought the way that this was presented, though, that this was talking. I thought the way that this was presented, this was talking about being able to use a bike to go from one neighborhood to another or something, not for recreational purposes.
I mean,
It could be
Jason,
both,
you want
right?
to
It could be
clarify?
both.
It could be both. I don't have any experience using it for transportation to get from one side of the city to the other using these wetland areas. Somebody here may have more experience than I do.
Jason, you want to clarify this line between recreation and community?
Well, it could be both. We were looking at it first from a standpoint of responding to the community in the survey. There was a very clear kind of line of thought from the respondents that they would like to see more facilities for bicyclists and for pedestrians. And so this, first and foremost, we put this together as a set of recommendations for people who want to kind of move maybe from one neighborhood to the next, or from a neighborhood to a school or to a park. Kind of those three different sort of destinations. Could they be used recreationally? Absolutely. And there may be some of these that, because of the lay of the land, because of the development pattern around them, you can't really connect up from one location to another like you might initially want to try to achieve. But it might turn out that would instead be just a good place to have the kind of recreational activity that Barry was talking about. But these recommendations were looked at with the primary target of allowing people to move around the community, walking and bicycling,
Yeah, regardless of why they're moving around the community.
And of course, so a lot of people just want to have somewhere safe to walk. They're not necessarily going from point A to point B. They're just out getting some exercise, or they're wanting to ride a bike because it's fun, not because they're trying to get somewhere in particular. Those routes would serve those same purposes.
Yeah. Of course, you do. I've got questions like, okay, so you get to Highway 27 down at the bottom of the S curves there. I mean, do we have a tunnel? Do we build a bridge? Do we just turn up the highway and go up to Cotton Creek, cross there? And I mean, you've got all sorts of questions. But I mean, it sounds like there's at least some interest in diving a little deeper on this, right? I mean, that's what I'm hearing.
Yes, because I'm looking at it from when I was hearing it, and when I first read develop off-street shared paths to connect parks and schools to neighborhoods. That's my mind goes to neighborhood. My mind went to neighborhoods, whether it's recreational or not. People can access a sidewalk. Let's say, I'll give you an example, like the Coppinville area. I hear people say, we would like a sidewalk. You know why they want that sidewalk? So they want a path that they can just get to Walmart and use it for exercise and go to Walmart, not drive, deal with the traffic, boom, come back home. There's churches. There's a church right across. It's areas that they can access. If they, when I see sidewalks like paths, shared paths, I think of, I'm thinking exact neighborhoods and how that could benefit in those neighborhoods. So it's definitely something to.
The reason why somebody might want to have a sidewalk or a bike path in a particular part of town may vary. I want to be able to get to a business, or I want to be able to school or church, but there's certainly we did hear from the community that there was interest in more.
Yeah.
More of that. So.
I think personally, if properly executed, I mean, that it could really be a calling card for enterprise. I mean, it could be a unique. Now, how are we going to secure it? Is it going to be lit? Obviously, it would have to be maintained and kept clean. And I mean, I can already hear one of the concerns is, this is where the criminals are going to come in at night to rob my neighborhood. These types of of things because they automatically go to the what kind of bad things can happen.
Worst case scenario.
Right.
I think it would
And which
definitely,
some of them are legitimate concerns, and we have to address them.
Yeah.
I think it'll definitely help the infill
Yes. Yes.
for sure.
Absolutely.
But you can't infill without pedestrian, can
Yeah.
I mean, can you have can you really bring in downtown type of residential developments
Right.
without the connectivity? Because that's what people that are
Yeah.
moving down there want.
Right. The folks who would want to kind of choose it at this point in time to move to a location inside the circle, sort of near downtown, are probably looking for a neighborhood that has sidewalks or that
Where they can walk
has
downtown.
that kind of walkability,
Yeah.
bikeability.
Jonathan, did you have anything to add on that? It looked like you might. I'm not requiring it.
We were just talking about the some of those areas that we might already own or have easements to. Certainly, talking to Barry, this would be something that I agree with Jason. At some point, if we want to do a deeper dive on this, a consultant to kind of talk about the feasibility and really look at that and then the cost and what the recommendations would be, because this would be very time consuming for just as a staff to try to accomplish this.
No. And I think this is to be expected. We're doing this big overarching plan,
Right.
and then we're going to break it down into little nodes, and then the council, we're going to meet next month, and we're going to set our priorities. And obviously now we've got this tool to bounce it off of, and we've got to pick a few priorities for next year, and then the year after that, and the year after that. And at some point, this will rise to the top, and we'll charter a study.
Right.
Isn't that how you see this happening?
I do, and when you get to I do have a comment when you get to the transportation piece,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
there is at least one particular area with a direct tie-in that I've heard.
So the next item on my list was the connectivity. Jason pitched us this idea of creating more connectivity between the spoke roads. I don't know if this is what you're referring to, Jonathan, but we've got all these spoke roads. We've got the hub, we've got the circle, and we've got all these spoke roads, which we're all familiar with. And, we do lack some connectivity between those spokes outside of the circle. And so they've actually, already drawn in some proposed routes. Obviously, again, we would need a study and figure out where those are. So go ahead, Jonathan. Is that what you were wanting to segue into?
So on one of those areas in particular, kind of ties in with the need for parks, and then the trails or whatever they called there. And that's an area up by Porter Lunsford Road connecting to Rucker Boulevard. And so over the last few years, we've talked to, at least Heron Creek School there would benefit from that. And part of their problem is, and maybe incidentally Rucker Boulevard Elementary, to get from where that growth is happening up 27 to the north and to the east, back down to the circle, and then down Rucker Boulevard presents a busing issue for the school system. They can't get people timely to their schools, right? So as a result of that, when they look at redistricting as population centers shift, at some point in the future, if they can't accommodate, they'll have an option to build another school, which could be, financially that would be very difficult when they could add capacity at other schools. So that's something that would tie into something that the school system, but also, Chief Davis and I have talked. There's a fire station on Rucker Boulevard, about where that ties in. Can you show them on the map where the tie-in? So down on 248, yep, right there. So that there's a fire station there, but again, to get to the residents on the north side, they have to go all the way down to the bypass through up 27, which delays response time. So if there was a route to really target, this is just my opinion, but hearing from some of you, some people in the school system, or some of our staff members as they look at that, that is a critical area that would benefit schools, would benefit fire. And then again, if you have two routes, you have a short route that you could tie in that would just benefit really the busing issue and potentially an emergency vehicle. But if you could do some sort of limited connectivity sort of route,
More of a parkway.
then you could look at, is there area to develop a park off of that? And, it would expedite commerce. So you have a lot of people at Fort Rucker that want to go into the Shell Field gate. That gate gets closed. They have to drive, 30 or 45 minutes. So it creates a staffing issue for Rucker at times, which we've had that conversation with them. And so it's something that they would benefit from as well.
It's closed on the weekends right now.
It is,
Yeah.
but they would close it more frequently if there was a way to timely get personnel that live in those areas into the Rucker gate, which saves them money that they can reinvest into, their mission. So there's a lot of things that I've heard over the last 2 years that point to that area as one that is of particular value and emphasis.
I've heard that road discussed for as long as I can remember. I think there's been some rumors of a connecting road.
But all of these, are very good in terms of, once the bypass is completed in 4-lane, over time, I do see, another ring, another layer that connects those areas that, that would be of value to the city. And while I think from living here over the last 20 years, feel like we have a lot more traffic than we used to. I don't think we're anywhere near like a 280 in Birmingham situation on a lot of our roads, but it is, time is not what it was to get around the bypass or anywhere else in town. So, as we look to those routes, I don't know if you're saying we don't need to build the road, in the next few years, but maybe start having some conversations about how would we acquire, right away for those properties in the future. Those would be things that I think we could start thinking about in planning that would lower the cost. But it's going to be somebody's problem at some point in the future. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I see some of these things tying in, and where we invest first as a priority. I don't know, that's up to you, but just wanted to give my feedback on some different parties that all point around certain areas.
And just want to piggyback on that. There are really kind of 4 areas that we've shown. 3 of those are on the north or the east side. The one on the south side here, not necessarily be something that the city would want to go and build themselves, but as subdivisions are proposed in that area, have them interconnect. If a subdivision gets built off of 27, they leave a stub on their east side so that subdivision next to them connects up. So ultimately, you end up with a street that connects over from 27 over to 167 on the south side of town. So it's not, these suggestions are not all, the city has to go and do this. There are a few of these that may happen as a result of private development, but needs, through the subdivision process to be shown that we need to make these connections here. And, in the one that I suggested or just described before, doesn't have to be one road that goes all the way across. It doesn't have to be a direct route. It could be, there could be a couple of turns involved, so you're not creating a through route for traffic through neighborhoods, but it's an alternative route that can be taken by those who want to get from here over to here without having to go onto the bypass. So it doesn't have to be a big road, 4 lanes or something like that, with traffic speeding through neighborhoods. It just be maybe neighborhood streets that just connect up to one another so that you can go from point A to point B without having to get on the bypass.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of the other side of the spectrum on those suggestions.
Yeah, and one of the things that I saw as a recurring theme in here is that consistently what rose to the top as a quality of life issue was congestion on the east and north side of the circle. And so, obviously the assumption is, oh, well, then we need to 6-lane the circle. We need to 8. Well, that's not practical. So what other things can we do? And that's where these, I would assume a traffic engineer would go straight to, well, you need better connectivity. You need to, how do we better facilitate traffic on the circle? How do we keep people off of the circle? How do we get them to go an alternative route? So if you've got 3, 4, 5 streets that can handle 1,000, 2,000 cars a day, now all of a sudden you've got 8, 10,000 cars off the circle a day, and given the circle that much more life. Any other questions or comments on the connectivity piece, Chief?
Real quickly, and I think Jonathan covered it well. Everybody's covered it very well, talking about connectivity. One of the biggest things that has been in the fire department, those of us who have been there quite some time, for example, what he's talking about, being able to connect Rucker Boulevard to Port Lunsford Road. In a good way, I think, to look at it is that if we had to have 2 engines, or we had to support Northside's territory, which would be Port Lunsford Road, the next closest one is Eastside Fire Station, which has to go all the way down the boulevard, take a ride on the bypass, take a ride on 27. Whereas the crow flies, it's right there, truly. And it also, as we're looking at things like ISO, and I know you guys don't want me to get into that again, but the 1710 that we talked about that gives us the timing also gives us the distance, which is all done in road miles. Whereas you may be able to get very close to that if there is a cut through or some connectivity there. There's no way to maintain 1.5 road miles from Eastside Fire Station all the way to that side of the town. So I from our standpoint, from emergency response, I can't tell you how important that is, not only in that area, but any area that forces us to take detours around the bypass.
All right, thank you, Chief. Next item I had, just going in the order of Jason, was this idea of annexation, I believe to the southwest and a little to the southeast, I think. What authority do we have outside of the landowner formally requesting it, which we do all the time? We annex and zone. So if we just want to set a policy of annexation, what authority do we have outside of just encouraging that? I don't know if Barry, Jonathan, or Jason want to take that.
Well, of course, you have through your utilities, you have the opportunity to require somebody who wants to come to use the sewer system or the water system to annex into the city. And beyond that, I think it's more about sort of the encouraging side of things. But through your utilities, you do have sort of an indirect ability to require new developments annexed into the city. Otherwise, I think it's more talking with landowners and encouraging annexation by the landowners into the city in those areas. But utilizing all the tools you have available, but the encouraging and the utilities requirements.
Gotcha. Barry, Jonathan, y'all have anything to add on that?
I was just saying, as far as annexation, what we have dealt with in the past has been more of a reactive. We have a subdivision that wants to come in, or somebody wants to bring a piece of property in to annex into the city because they wanted city garbage, or they wanted city sewer, or they wanted us to maintain the roads or the utilities. Typically, it's the developer comes in and says, I want to build this and turn it over to the city. City, you maintain it. As far as pushing forward, I'd like to do a deeper dive into how do we go about encouraging annexation in those areas that Jason kind of pointed out on his map, kind of to the west and some of that out Rucker Boulevard, I remember, and some up to the north.
Yeah, I mean,
some of those
you
are
can
Rucker
see
Boulevard.
there the west side is not even in the city limits.
Right, the city limits actually, stops at the circle or just inside the circle at
Basically,
134 right there.
The four-way stop, basically.
And then we've got some islands out on Rucker Boulevard that we constantly get complaints about code compliance stuff, and we go out there and realize it's not even in the city limits. You go in, out, in, out, in, out, getting all that.
But there's no way to get that horse back in the barn, is there?
I don't know.
Outside of legislative action or something.
Yeah, that would take a little bit of research to be able to answer that question.
Yeah.
I wanted to just point out that not all annexation's good as well. So I think that however the policy or whatever the city adopts on the comprehensive plan, because this came up in a recent transaction with a property owner who wanted to annex in for a subdivision. And they said, well, it says on your comprehensive plan you want to annex out this way. Well, there were other things outside of just that way, like we have to take over a county road and a culvert. And do we want the obligation to maintain that because we have to bring them up to city standards in a lot of instances? And so just because we say we want to on the comprehensive plan, it would be helpful if we maybe elaborated on what we meant. Like I agree on the Western Bypass, that's prime real estate that could one day, have commercial activity, which we would want to have sales tax revenues generated from potentially, or growth or areas that just connect to the city. But there are other areas that could be, problems for us where we're sinking millions of dollars into solving them that we otherwise wouldn't have to do that. So.
One other thing I wanted to mention, kind of going back to your question about what powers you have. One, a lot of cities don't do, but they have the authority to, is within your subdivision regulations, you can set a density limit on development outside of the city limits. A few cities have done that, and the point is that if you're going to build just outside the city limits, you can only build just so densely. You can't build, garden homes or townhouses just outside the city limits because you're trying to avoid.
Which the lack of sewage is probably going to preclude that anyway, right?
That certainly will. But you can
But you can put in private sewer treatment.
You can. But you can use the subdivision regulations to establish a minimum lot size for residential or a minimum lot size for business development. So there may be a possibility where someone would prefer to annex in because they have the ability to ask for zoning that would eliminate that limitation, and they could build more densely, or they can build a business with on a smaller size lot. Not recommending necessarily that you go and do that, but that is an opportunity that you have through your subdivision, a tool you can use to manage the development just outside the city limits, so that it's not overstressing your infrastructure. And in certain cases, it may encourage developers or landowners to annex in because they may be able to do more if they annex into the city and they have the right kind of zoning in place if there's a limit established by the subdivision regulations.
All right.
Outside.
Any other questions or comments on annexation? Why don't we, if everybody's okay, take about a 10-minute break? We've been at it an hour and a half. I know. So let's take a 10-minute break. I've got 5:25. It's actually 5:26. So about a 9-minute break. 4:20. Yeah, that's what I meant. But at 4:35, let's meet back here. that, they just get real concerned with it. Is everybody ready to need water or anything? All right, we'll continue here. I've got a few more items and that I wanted to make sure we discussed, and I'll obviously give everybody else an opportunity if y'all had some notes. So the next concept that Jason pitched us was this parkland goal, which I believe was 8 acres per 1,000. How many acres do we have?
Cannot remember off the top of my head, but you're very close to that.
Can we get over to the
Sure.
pertinent slide? So we're right around that.
Yes.
So
yes, you're close to
every
that.
person we add, we drop further and further below that.
That is correct. And we did some very rough population projections to get an idea based on your historic population growth pattern, kind of where you'd be at in the next 10, 20, and 30 years. You'll notice at the beginning of that section that we if you were to strive for that 8 acres per 1,000 8 acres per 1,000 population, about how much parkland you'd need to add each 10 years. And it's so by 2030, adding 60 acres. Of course, there are several properties in the city that are mentioned in the plan may become park space that are, that would kind of lower that number considerably. And then another 28 acres in addition to that by 2040, another 28 acres to that by 2050.
So right now, our concern is less quantity and volume, more distribution.
Right. And as I think looking at the way things are today, you've got about the right amount of park space. You've got a lot of really big parks and only a very small number of more neighborhood serving parks, which is good on one side because those big community parks are draws. People drive from whatever part of town they want to that park.
And ball fields are included in this.
Right. But at the same time, for moms and dads who want to just take their toddler to the park and not it be a tremendous outing for the day, having a nearby a park, small neighborhood park with playground, is very convenient and certainly adds is an important amenity for neighborhoods. You don't have a lot of those. You have a few of those. So meeting the over time meeting the parkland goals doesn't necessarily mean adding more Donaldson or PV big park investments, but it could be taking on smaller chunks and looking at the distribution will kind of give you an eye or where you're in need of parks, kind of based on where people are living, gives you a target for where you might want to focus those efforts.
Billy, you got some thoughts on this? See you hiding back there.
No, I was just talking with Jonathan. We were just looking at some of the bigger circles and, more some of the ideal. What we were talking about was the 3 top right. The one in the middle would be more ideal if we can future development of other opportunities. But
well, obviously that
yeah.
If you had the connectivity,
If you had the connectivity,
then you could
the
probably
ideal.
do with
Right.
just one, maybe bigger one.
Right.
But I will say, that's the side of town that Greg and I both live on, and it's our districts. And I don't know about you, but I don't drive by a park on a daily basis. Our communities are not served by parks unless they're driving across what I would consider town to Johnny Henderson Park. Now, if you had the trail, it would be a bike ride over to Johnny Henderson.
Right.
If there was a tunnel under Highway 27.
That's right. And I've had requests that we need to be looking into a park on Rucker Boulevard
Mhm.
down that side. So I mean it's a,
Yeah.
It's a,
So
definitely
in concept, you agree with
in concept, I do agree with that.
Yeah, if you had that Port of Lunsford and then the park on, so that one your microphone.
If you had the park there on Rucker Boulevard and then had that connector we were talking about, Port of Lunsford, that could easily serve both
Right.
sections there.
Absolutely.
Well, and to Jonathan's earlier point, if you
Right.
built it as a limited access kind of parkway style road that had a park off of it, and that what you were kind of implying was that it would all be incorporated as one project.
May I throw something in?
Absolutely.
All right, back on page 1 on the growth strategy, it says the park and recreation system will be enlarged as the city grows. And then the parks, of course, need to be distributed throughout the city so that the neighborhoods will have easy access to a public park. Then on page 17, it says the city owns 3 properties south of College Street, including the sites of the former Civic Center and the old junior high school. These sites would be appropriate for a park space or another community use. And I personally, as a city councilman, the people in my neighborhood and our members of the West Side Neighborhood Association would like to see that the old junior property become a park to remain a green space. I think it would benefit the city if it had a small structure on it for civic clubs to meet in, for garden clubs. We have the farmers market, but that's an expensive place. I'm talking about have something very simple, just an open room, maybe with a little kitchenette and bathrooms. You could call it the clubhouse. Maybe people could meet in it for $25 or for minimum fee. Also, we could add a gazebo in this area, plant some additional trees, some walkways. So that's what we would like to see with the old junior property.
And I think that would fall directly under that section. I made some notes under that similar to that about the community facilities, having more places that our citizens can access to, the use for different things.
Any other thoughts on the park goals? So I would assume that this is obviously another one of those categories we're going to have to break off, do a deeper dive on, something that we can discuss more at length in our strategic plan next month. All right, next item was library. I know it seems like library's come up in the last 2 budget hearings, I think, last 2 years. I think there's been some discussion over a long range plan. Again, this is something that's going to take a deeper dive on, and it seems like we've already spent $150 million tonight on all of this stuff. But any thoughts on the library from Sonia? What are your thoughts on the library?
I remember back when I first got on the council, it was on. I don't want to say for sure. Maybe something we had a little conversation about the library. I don't know if this previous council was discussing doing a new library. We kind of shoved that to the side or whatever. But I definitely think we need to expand it and modernize it some. I don't necessarily think it needs to be a big, gigantic structure, but just something nice, modern, bigger. But I like his idea. I wrote down, he mentioned about possibly in the same location or downtown area. it's accessible. But my thoughts with the library too, to make it, when I say modern, I know we've talked about like resource centers. I think one time that kind of came up in our strategic plan to have things that people can utilize, our citizens can access computers and have a space in the library for that specifically would be, I think they do now, but just even on a grander scale would be nice.
Eugene, what are your thoughts?
Personally, I would like to see the library stay where it is in the existing building it's in. If it needs to be enlarged, maybe that's something to think about. But it definitely needs to be renovated, brought up to date.
Greg?
Well, whatever we do, it definitely needs to be brought up to date. But I think at times that we could use one that was a little easier to navigate around, and maybe a larger building that was, as was stated earlier, actually designed for a library. Of course, I know we are spending a lot of money right now on this council, so
and
we've got to
on
be
that,
careful to
keep in mind this is a comprehensive plan that's hitting a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year. This is recognizing, identifying our needs as a community, and figuring out what we can afford. So I guess if anything, we can dream big.
The area of I like it staying in downtown.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't want it to move across somewhere else, but I think we could benefit with a larger. I don't know if there's a way to add on to that or not. I know at times if there's a lot of activity going on there, parking can be an issue at times. But now we're supposed to be working with that parking lot there, so I think we could go either way. But if I just had my big wish list, I'd say let's build a nice, big, fabulous library.
Yeah. Scotty?
Yeah, I like the idea of being downtown, draw folks down there, especially the resources Sonia mentioned about for our kids, computer-wise and stuff. We do need a new facility. I know Ms. Sheila would appreciate that, and our citizens would. I don't know if it's the right timing or not, but I'm just going to College Street Elementary. I know the situation it's in right now, but that's a huge, big building. It's got a library in it. It's got a rec center. It's got a little cafeteria. It's got all sorts of stuff in it that I think at one time the city had it and we gave it back, but maybe out of line. But there's a facility that's still close enough and would be next to a park that Eugene mentioned that has access to downtown. And I think it probably wouldn't take too much. I'm not a money guy, but to try to go in there and make that facility. I don't know if that's the best facility for a library or not to have one in there, but we definitely need something. And again, we need something close to town, in town. And I think it has the connectivity for folks.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're not all too far apart, but there are some different opinions. I'm more in line with maybe what Greg is saying, that I would prefer to see a purpose-built facility in the central downtown area. Obviously, parking is a concern. Would probably, whether it's on the same area it is now or what, but in a library that's built, whatever a library is, if we think library, that's a building of books. If we're building this in 2030, it looks a lot different than a library built in 1970. And the building it's currently in was probably built well before 1970. So my preference, if we're creating wish list, would be a purpose-built facility in the downtown area. But that again, that's just going to fit in that category of we're going to have to do a deeper dive on that. At some point, I think we're going to have to get somebody to, which I believe somewhere at the end, y'all got kind of a list of all this, right, in the action plan. So, at some point we're going to have to get all this down, rack and stack it, put some dollar figures out there, and then start to prioritize and figure out what we can afford to take down. Obviously, we're taking some pretty big steps right now in City Hall, PD Park, and the rec center, among other things. So, good segue, Barry, into City Hall, police department. So right now, City Hall, it is our mayor's office, it is our police department, it is our engineering department, it is our finance and HR and water, the administration section of
That's
water.
correct.
I'm probably leaving something out. E911.
There's a lot of functions that are currently in this building. We are in receipt of the 90% set of drawings from the architect Friday that we're working through to try to get him comments back by before Christmas. Our schedule right now is to take bids February the 9th on City Hall. Just as a kind of an overview, what we're doing is we're looking at pulling police downstairs. So everybody that's downstairs now, which is engineering department, tourism, Main Street, to move those people out, do the renovation, and then as an alternate to that would be the top floor, doing a complete renovation of upstairs. But in this plan is to bring the building up to standard. I mean, the building was built in '68, and we've made small modifications here and there. But if you can imagine a house built in 1968, pretty much the air conditioner system was 1968. The electrical system was 1968. The chairs we're sitting in are the original chairs from 1968. So there's a lot of things that have to be done. We're bringing the electrical system all up to code. We're bringing the HVAC all up to code and modernization as far as how do we do zoning in the different areas. And we're all trying to do this while we inhabit and work in City Hall. We don't have the luxury of moving off site. Give us a year to build it back and come back. You know, we all have to live here and work here, and the public needs to interact with those departments that we talked about. So that will be a coordination exercise with staff and the architect how to do that. But regardless of what it is long term, you know, we're talking long term, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years down the road, this building still needs some love, and it needs to be brought up to today's standard, regardless of what stays here and what doesn't stay here. But we're currently moving forward to move police down. They have plenty of room downstairs for their current needs and the needs for what they foresee in the foresee close future. And then bringing engineering up. So if you oblige me for just a minute, when you walk in the front doors on the back wall, you will have the water department, revenue, and engineering right there. That's where the public comes. So they'll be right there together, side by side. So you don't have to say, well, you'll need to go downstairs to engineering. No, you just right next door. If you'll pop your head in there, Courtney will take care of you. Or we need to get a business license. It's just one door down. Just come out, first door on your left. So everything the public entertains to deal with the staff and the city about getting the things they need to do, we work with the city, will be right there front and center. Then everything to the back will be not the interaction the public has, but to do business. So accounting, HR, the other part of engineering that the public doesn't see, but things that we deal with. On this side, we'll have the police chief's area back here in the back. This room will be repurposed to a courtroom, a true courtroom, like you would walk into a court. The mayor's office is do a little bit of renovation, but the way it is right now is pretty much the way it'll stay with some small modifications. So what we're doing with now is, with this project, is to bring it up to stage, to get us to 10, 20 years down the road, what we foresee the needs of the city are. But what I think what Jason's calling out is what happens if the city continues to grow? What happens if we double in size? There will be a point when we don't have enough room here to flex for the different departments to do the things that it needs to do in this building. And what we're doing is basically it's a business plan, long range. Where would City Hall be? Is this it? How would we do that? And I don't want to speak for you, Jason, but I think that's kind of the intent of what we're talking about City Hall. We all see it as this building, but is this a building 50 years from now? And where should that be?
And practically, it probably looks like some sort of fragmentation of, you know, maybe police stays here or police moves out to free up room, or mayor's office admin goes downtown, or right? I mean,
That's correct. You know, some cities as they grow, they turn the old city hall into the police station, and they build a new city hall that's meets their other needs. Sorry.
One of the things that I was just going to mention is that we just talked about this in our staff meeting today, but you know, I don't know if that's 5 years, 10 years down the road, but I don't think it's 20 or 30 down the road. Some city council in the fairly near future will be forced with a decision about city hall or the police department to either build a new police department or build a new city hall, or find a space to occupy as city hall, or a police department. But I think no matter what, 80-90% of what we're spending money on right now to fix this building and give it another 30, 40, 50 years of life is a great thing, because this building will still serve the citizens of Enterprise.
regardless of what direction we go.
Right. And we're not talking about, you know, the major lift. When I say like 80-90%, I mean, stuff we're talking about doing in this building is like a new roof and an HVAC. I mean, things that won't matter
Regardless
what's
of
in it.
use,
Right.
have to be done.
That's right.
So we're excited to do that, and we're working with the police department now. They're looking to give us some avenues here to give us some room to flex and move people around. And I'll just tell you, like I told someone today, we're going to be very uncomfortable staff-wise for the next year and a half, 2 years, while we're going to have to be on top of each other, and we have to be flexible, and we're going to have to, you know, do what we have to do to serve the public. And I hope the public understands that. But when we come through the other end of this tunnel, it's going to be a nice facility. And we're looking at doing things on the exterior that need to be done that we're having issues with on the exterior, but we don't want to spend a ton of money on the outside facade, but we want to bring it more modern than what it is now. So people look at it and go, that's definitely City Hall. And that's something they'd be proud of to have right in the heart of their city. So we're working with the architect to come up with some plans for the front. Also, the police entry will be on the side where engineering is now. So the doors will come out, and that'll have a new facade put down there, and we'll have to help them funnel the public when they come see the police department. Will be over here where the old fire bays are, and that's getting reworked.
And what about this triangle over here? Is there going to be parking for the police department?
So we're looking at, when the police come here, is to come up with a layout for that parking lot area so the police can park there. That's not something that's currently in our contract with the architect. That's something we'll probably do in-house. Come up with a development there. The whole idea is if we could get the police area to park there, then we can move all of staff behind City Hall where the police currently park now, kind of do a switcheroo for where people park and access.
Maybe rearrange these streets back here.
We are looking at the possibility of doing a kind of a reconfiguration of how the streets are done. If we have place for the public, need to go to the police department. I really don't want to cross an active street if we don't have to. So we're trying to determine what's the best way of doing that. Now, for right now, the critical path for the building is get the building under construction. We can work on the roads and the parking lots on a different timeline, but still achieve the same goal on that. So right now, the push is to get comments back to the architect so we can get this building under construction.
And hope to go to bid when?
February the 9th is bid
I think you
date.
said that, yeah. Any questions of Barry on that? Chief Moore, did you have any thoughts on anything?
No, I think with all the conversation we've had, we talked about it today, and yep, we are fully aware that we're going to be on top of each other, very uncomfortable. The school board was gracious enough to give me a large part of Old Coppinville that I can occupy to kind of relieve some of the stress around here. So they've worked quite a bit with us to make that happen. So again, cooperation with our citizens that we're going to be spread around and very thin, but like Barry said, at the end, it's all for good stuff, all for a good cause. I think most of us know it's going to be stressful for 2 years or so, but we're looking forward to it. It's a good stress. So yes, I thank the council and the mayor for it. So all good stuff. So thank you.
Anybody got any other thoughts on City Hall? All right. Anybody got anything else on the comprehensive plan before we move on? Jason, you need any feedback from us? Any specific questions that have come up in the last couple hours? Barry, Jonathan, anybody?
No, sir. What we'll do is Kim's in the back taking notes of what we came up with, and we'll kind of distribute that back. Is there any action items you want us to do? And we'll make sure we incorporate that in. But I think we have good direction between KPS for us to get this thing in a final draft format, and look forward to getting this complete.
All right.
Thank you for your time for the 2 hours tonight. I know it was a long time, but I really appreciate it.
All right. Yeah, thank you all. I think we all feel a little more educated on the subject now. All right, guys, we will move back to our work session agenda, which we're right on track. Jonathan, do you want to give us an update on our quarterly goals, which are on the face of the agenda here on the first and second page?
Sure. So on the quarterly goals, under not complete, I have our comprehensive plan, which we're here tonight. Just finished talking about that for the last 2 hours. The draft is essentially complete, but we need now to move on to the next phase for adoption. Sounds like our strategic planning meeting on the 24th will engage some of that, and then Jason's got some work to do based on the feedback that he's got here to button it up and get you a final sometime in February. The recreation center and pool, it says under construction. The demo is under construction. I think the main facility, it depends on how you want to classify that, but the site will be turned over to the contractor January 1.
Yeah.
So I would consider that to be
I
substantially.
don't think any of us will
started.
argue that, will we? We'll call that complete.
The city training and development plan is started. The comprehensive plan draft, we just talked about that, and we just finished the dedicated work session. We had to punt that, if you recall, some scheduling issues, and we just finished it up. Go no go on recreation center and pool, that was complete. Obviously, we went to bid, and it was awarded. The citywide training by department on NeoGov topics. We had that. All the department heads were, had 2 sessions at the community college. That process now under implementation. I've taken some of the training that we've had online, and we're getting feedback now.
How's that going? I mean, is it quality training?
It is. Some of it could stand to be a little more robust, but for the most part, a lot of that stuff is just cut and dry type training that whether or not it's prevention of sexual harassment or other topics that come up on in your course of business. It's not a lot. It's just dry material that you have, and it's important material, but there's really no way to make it exciting from that perspective. So and I think it gets the job done. So I think Chief Moore's briefed you on the staffing issues in executive session 2 months ago. Citywide training by departments undergoing. The external touch points you'll find in your packet. I can send that to you as a digital copy as well if Carol has not. But those are those Excel spreadsheets that you'll find in there. And they talk about when they interact with the public or intergovernmental touch points with other staff members. So, if there's an inspection from fire, they might have to interact with revenue or the engineering department. So all that's annotated on those Excel sheets. The spec building, we pushed that to 23. We have, have all the information to, in that case, we were talking about the Alabama Power Spec Building Program. So we're just trying to work with the Industrial Development Board right now to get a plan in place and size the building correctly and bring you back. Ultimately, since the ID Board doesn't have funding, if you recall, that's going to be something that the City Council will either authorize to fund or not.
But that project is still active.
It is. Go, no go on pickleball courts. I think in your packets tonight, you'll see authorized to enter into a contract for architect to design, which then subsequently will go to bid and have a price to come back to you with and say either approve or an award or move on. And then a lot of the other ones, so speeding and traffic, sewer and drainage issues, those are going to be added into the comprehensive plan. Talked to Jason about those. And we've worked with Christine on the lateral transfer policy. We have a version of a lateral transfer policy that we can already and have already utilized in the city. And some of those things are things that you're approving even tonight, and are, high demand, like CDL drivers, heavy equipment operators, folks like that, where we might need to slide them on the pay scale. We can already do that under our current policy with the mayor's approval, and that's the course that we've taken right now.
So no council actions needed on that.
Not right now, no sir. The bid and award for the PV Park improvements, which is technically, I guess, on the college side of it's really not PV Park, slated for January 23rd right now. So that one will not be completed in the fourth quarter. And then the bicycle and pedestrian traffic will be added into the comprehensive plan, as we discussed.
All right, good. So we're on track to accomplish most of our annual goals.
Yes, sir.
Of course, this is our last meeting of the year, right? Calendar year, at least. Does anybody have, well, first, does anybody have any questions of Jonathan on our quarterly / annual goals, which are pretty much one and the same at this point? Does anybody have any other issues they want to add for future consideration? Obviously, we're going to have an opportunity next month when we do our more deep dive on our strategic plan. So, but of course, at any time, if y'all want to get something added to this list, just shoot me an email and I will get it added. All right. We will now move into our next agenda item, which is reviewing our agenda for this evening. Beverly, everything still consistent with what you sent out, other than, I guess, the short-term rental thing that we'll discuss here in a minute. Did you know that? All right. Everybody turn to their agenda. Of course, we'll have roll call, prayer and pledge of allegiance, and the approval of the agenda. Then we've got our consent agenda, which is a couple of meeting minutes from December 6th. Then we've got our contract billings from Wiregrass Construction on our Phase 3A. Glenn, would you mind giving us an update on our resurfacing plan? Or our resurfacing project on Phase 3?
Of course, the Phase 3A is under construction now. I'd say it's probably 70%, give or take, 75% done. The contractor will be taking off next week. They don't work at all during the week between Christmas and New Year's, so there won't be any activity. The weather this week with the rain, they worked yesterday, of course, delayed them a little bit. I will tell you on the next phase, which is 3B, we actually received bids this afternoon at 2 o'clock for those. We received 2 bids. The contractor that's doing 3A, Wiregrass Construction, was the low bidder, and the bid was basically in line with what unit price wise it would have been for 3A. So we'll be reviewing that bid and doing a bid recommendation and tabulation probably for the first council meeting in January.
So will they just roll straight into 3B?
That's what they want to do. Yes. If it gets awarded, obviously, in the first council meeting in January, it'll take a few weeks to get the contract documents executed. So it will be February, mid-February maybe. But what they would like to do is roll right on into the Phase 3B, and it looks like that's kind of what schedule-wise it'll work.
All right. Then we've got Flagship Contracting, which is the Highway 167 North Utility relocation. And we've got the invoices from Glenn and Polly regarding those two projects. We've got our demolition project, CDBG. Barry, is that going well?
You're talking about the CDBG demo grant?
Yeah,
we
Hopper
are doing really well. We've got a couple places. We talked earlier about targeting certain areas. A couple of them that we have heard input from council and from the mayor's office, like for example, the car wash across the street from City Hall. We've been approaching people that we knew that might want to be included, and they came back and said, "Yeah, please use that opportunity to take down some of these structures that they're not going to put back in business." So the project's going extremely well. We're cleaning up some areas. The intent of the program was to do residential, and there was a lot of them that we had targeted, saying, "Hey, we would think this would be a good candidate," and we were trying to reach out to them. But whether we could contact with the owner, or the owner just didn't want to be a part of the program, we ran through the ones that we knew that were repeat offenders. So now we're looking at other opportunities so we can close that grant out. I think we're down to the 5th phase, I believe, on that. So we're trying to fill out that 5th phase. We're right there at getting ready to close that program out. So from everything I've heard, everybody's really satisfied that we're turning these things around like we should. So we'll be ready next time they make this available to us. If that's still a need for the city, we'll apply and do this again.
Now, both of these estimates say final.
Those are final, so they've been done. We've inspected. The sites are clean.
But there is future.
So that's final invoicing for the phase 3 and 4. But
2 and 3.
So sorry, 2 and 3.
So
that's
there's
right.
going to be a phase
There's
4.
There's phase 4 that we're filling up now. So we still have some money left in that program that we currently have under that grant. But those are final invoices for phases 2 and 3. That was one phase off. So we're filling up phase 4 right now under the same grant.
All right. Any questions on the CDBG demo project? All right. Then we've got CDG Engineers and Associates for the Schofield Roundabout. Anything we need to know about that? Okay. I thought there was.
We're in conversation right now with CDG. They've gotten estimates in place for the total cost of that project, and we're working with our consultant and AlDOT to secure the funding for the construction. Currently, we have funding of about $3 million, and estimates are around $5 million to complete the project. So it is an AlDOT road, it is an AlDOT project. The city's commitment was to do the design, and we committed that and have performed that. So CDG is working with staff and AlDOT to come up with a funding plan to secure the remainder of the funds needed.
Anything to add, Jonathan? So I mean, practically speaking, I mean, what do we think? What path are we going down here?
I'll try to mince words with some of these things, but essentially, it was part of the A-Trip 2 program, which is a $2 million program. And then we had highway safety improvement money that AlDOT put on top of that.
That's federal money.
Right. Administered by AlDOT. So at this point, with that gap, any gap, if this, right now as it stands, the city would be obligated, if we continued down as designed, to pay. Which is a $2 million gap, $1.9 million gap.
And that's based on estimates, not on bids.
Correct. So AlDOT at this point has made a couple recommendations on trying to potentially change the design, which again, based on their recommendation, would be something that the city would have to fund. So we're talking to them and to CDG to find out, what that entails and who should be on the hook and financially and all those kind of things. So
nothing the council needs to do. We just need to be aware that all is not well necessarily.
Correct. Now let Barry.
So one thing I want to point out, this thing is slated to go to bid, or to be let by Aldot in March or April. I can't remember the exact date. So this is being proactive. We've got a set of plans that's been approved by Aldot, and we went through the consultant went through the estimating process of what is this going to be, and have identified a gap. So we're trying to be proactive in this and figure out, we don't want to wait till bid date and be looking at each other now what? So we've got some work to do there.
Okay. Any questions on that?
No action tonight, though, sir.
All right. Then we got our KPS group invoice for what Jason was here tonight for. Then our state governmental relations contract with Fine Getty and Associates, and a few travel requests from Main Street, Parks and Rec, and Police Department. The mayor is going to recognize the volleyball state champions. We've got our parade float winners and another presentation by the mayor. Then privilege of the floor and staff reports. We've got our, so I think I was telling Greg about this for the meeting. We've got a public hearing for ordinance 120622C, which is the short-term rental ordinance that we introduced at the last meeting. Y'all should have a copy in your packet. Jonathan, do we have the Beverly? So this right here is as introduced, right?
That's with the changes.
With the changes, okay. So Leanne and Jonathan and Rayner have worked to actually change, what was it, 6F. So what I'm looking at is the proposed changes, right? So the way that they've changed this language to say, upon business license application, submission of an affidavit by operator affirming that the short-term rental shall be in compliance with safety regulations as outlined in this ordinance on or before July 15th. So in other words, they're going to, for just 2022, 23.
That's gotta be changed.
I've just changed it.
Okay.
So for 2023, they're going to sign an affidavit saying, I will be in compliance on July 15th, which is what we talked about. That's what we contemplated. But the actual language that we introduced last time was a little confusing. So then it says, thereafter, an affidavit affirming compliance with said regulations to be submitted upon annual business license renewal. So in other words, for each subsequent year, 2024, and on when you either renew or when you apply for a new license, you're gonna by affidavit affirm that you are in compliance. So next year they get a grace period. Every subsequent year they must be in compliance. So this is the grace period that the short-term rental community asked for. So we're just clarifying.
That's what I understood we meant anyway. So.
It is, and and I'll take blame for the way that went down. We probably should have recessed and gone back and gotten the language hammered out, but we didn't. So we fixed it. It is how we contemplated. But tonight, what we're going to need to do, since that was introduced, we'll have our public hearing. Then somebody's going to need to make a motion to replace 6F with the new language, right, Rainer? It is, yeah. So we can get it done this calendar year.
What I would do is reintroduce ordinance 120622, and then call for a motion to suspend the rules to consider ordinance.
So reintroduce it with the change.
That's right.
So we're going to have a public hearing. Obviously, there may be people who come forward. We'll go through with that,
Right.
and then what would I just call for a motion to reintroduce with those changes,
Yes, what I would do is
or suspend the rules first?
I would start out before you open the public hearing.
Okay.
I would say we are reintroducing ordinance 120622-C. due to some amendments that were made or modifications that were made.
Should I
I would then
should I
have,
read the new language?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
And then I would call for the public hearing. And then I would call for a motion to suspend the rules to consider the ordinance. And then you take that vote and then you actually vote on the ordinance.
So we're going to reintroduce 120622C with amended language. And is it 6F? 6F. So I'll read that, then we'll move, then suspend the rules. No, we'll go through the public hearing, then we'll suspend the rules. Call for a public hearing. Then we'll suspend the rules for immediate consideration. Is everybody comfortable with that? I mean, it's really just to come in line with our original intent from our introduction for immediate consideration. All right, moving on to new business. We've got to review and consider 12/20/22, which is to amend the employee classification plan for the sewer collection manager. Who wants to tell us about that? I believe we were briefed on this last meeting.
Yes, sir. This is what we discussed at the last meeting, and also we discussed during the budget hearings last October. Just to change our alignment a little bit in our sewer so that we have a manager over collections and a manager over disposal as well. So promoting a person from within from a grade 19 to a grade 21.
All right, so that's the next two items, right?
Yes, sir.
Sewer collection manager and wastewater treatment plant manager. Any questions from Barry on that? It's in the budget.
Yes, sir.
Then we're going to set a public hearing for vacating East Brunson Street, Hollis Street, Swenson Street, and then temporary closure of Brunson, Hollis, and Swenson Street. Believe this isn't the first I've heard about. I can't remember if we had talked about this in public or not.
There are three actual streets, and if it helps you, I'd be glad to throw them on the screen real quick. Give me 1 second.
We got time.
Everybody see? So I've got several different attachments, so bear with me. I'll just do them street by street. So when we build the rec center, we have several city streets that go through where the proposed rec center is going to be. And so what we're doing is vacating those portions of the road that come into city property and vacating those portions of the roads that will no longer be a public road. They'll still be owned by where it comes onto city property, they'll still be city property. We'll still maintain them. But if we ever need to do any work on the roads, we'll be able to do that without having to go through another closure. So the sections of road on East Brunson Street are with the X's shown. This is Moose Hope Gym sitting right here. So the new rec center will be sitting right on top of this building. We will come in and cul-de-sac that section of road on Brunson, and then it'll come into the back of the new rec center. That's the section of Brunson. I'll do each one of these individually in case y'all have questions.
Any questions on Brunson?
So this is Hollis, So Hollis Street, what we're doing is we're going to vacate Hollis Street at the end where Enterprise Rescue property stops there. That'll stop being a public street. That turns in right now behind Moose Hope, and it doesn't go anywhere currently now. It just stops. We're going to vacate that as a city street, ending at the back of Enterprise Rescue. This road will continue to exist, but we will do some modifications on that road as part of this project, and it'll still be there as part of the parking lot, but we're going to go ahead and vacate that section of road. So I wouldn't imagine that'd be
I assume no
much
concerns about
concern.
that.
And Swenson Street. So Swenson Street currently runs behind Cuts and turns back out onto East Lee Street. That road is being reconfigured and will come back across the front of where the new rec center will be. And we work with Cuts to come through with a new configuration. You'll still have an access point similar to this. There'll be another boulevard entrance, will be a new entranceway, and it'll connect all the way back down to Hollis Street. So the road will be there. It'll be in a different alignment, but right now the intention is to vacate that street as it exists right now, and then it'll come back onto city property with the rec center, and that'll be reconfigured back. You'll still be able to get down that road, but it'll be right at the front door of the new rec center.
And you said you have spoken with the folks over at Cuts about
Yes, sir.
what all's going on.
We're working with them to, because we share parking lots there now, and we will continue to do that in the new configuration. So they work very well with the city. I think we've come up with a plan that will be a successful plan for both of us.
Any questions, concerns on that? So we're approving a temporary closure. I guess to actually vacate, we have to go through a process with public hearing. So we're setting that legal process in motion, and then we're approving a temporary closure effective immediately.
The reason we're doing temporary closure is we're starting construction in January, and I don't know where the contractor will need to shut those roads down to start his work. So temporary road closure until we go through the process of vacating those roads.
Right. So practically speaking, assuming we go through with the closing, they'll never be reopened. So it's really not a temporary. Practically, it won't wind up being temporary.
Except for Swenson Street. Swenson Street will be reconfigured back and front and be reconnected back at a later date.
Gotcha.
But the intent at this point is not to make it a public street in front of the rec center. It'll be an interior road.
All right. Any other questions? All right, moving on to our McKee & Associates pickleball court design. Is that Billy? Jonathan?
I think we'll tag team this one. So we worked with, we reached out and talked to McKee & Associates. They've done several pickleball courts for different areas and come highly recommended. We talked to them about doing a master plan. And a master plan for the whole site being over at the college campus where the old tennis courts are. We looked at trying to see if we could use that same pad and do something there. The answer to that was no. It's just not usable for pickleball courts. But the site is a great site. So they recommended coming up with a design that would be a total of 16 pickleball courts through multiple phases and a possible pavilion or a assembly area in the middle. So 8 courts on one side, the center being some kind of a pavilion, gathering, whatever you want to call it. Then another 8 courts. So what we are charging them with, if you decide to go forward with us tonight, is do phase 1, which is 8 pickleball courts closest to the access drive with the college there now. So the 8 courts, and go ahead and master planning for the rest of it to be built out at a later date in sequential phases.
Do we have an agreement? Does our agreement with the college cover this? We're going to have to do a new agreement.
We will have to do a new agreement. President Long has spoken to the college board, and they're supportive of it, and we're in the process of getting that ironed out.
All right. Billy, do you have anything to add?
I'm talking about doing fences around the outside, lighting. It's a nice facility. But just the first phase being 8 courts.
Part of the reason it took this long because I was trying to communicate with some companies that build tennis courts, pickleball courts, and after conversation with them, it was best interest for us to work through an architect. And McKee Associates came up because they do quite a few. They have done a few here in Alabama, and Gulf Shores is one of them. Daphne is another one. So even Daphne, they built 6, and now they're turning around and building more right now. And then, of course, Gulf Shores, they went ahead and built 12. And so, again, that's part of the reason we were communicating with McKee and Associates, because of their expertise, that we can probably go ahead and partner with them to make sure we get this thing built.
And this was a budgeted item, that at least with the design services. Okay. Any questions or concerns? Everybody still supportive of this project, at least moving forward with designs? And obviously, if it comes in with numbers we can't live with, then we can always back up.
In your packet, the contract you've got is for everything through bid and construction phase services. So just to let you know, 70% of that is design, 5% is bid, and 25% is construction administration. So you're really signing up to go through 75% through bid if you want to do it. But I went ahead and negotiated a contract with them all the way through construction. If you decide to move this project all the way through, I didn't want to go back and renegotiate.
So if we approve this tonight and move forward, and just assuming bids came in, we approved them, would we start construction this fiscal year?
So early discussions with them, as if it gets approved tonight, they're looking to be on the street or taking bids somewhere around March of next year, about 3 months, they said, and then moving into construction early summer and having it done calendar year 23, sorry, 23.
Gotcha. Everybody good? All right, the next is to authorize mayor to execute a lighting service agreement with Alabama Power Garden Central Fire Station. Just 8 fixtures and poles. Chief, you want to update us on that? $432 a month.
These are currently already there, and we're paying, I believe it's about $170 more per month now. The only difference here, I know it says poles and wire. Those are already there. They're going to take down the fixtures, replace them with higher lumen LED fixtures, and that's the entirety of it. We are removing one light because it's too close to the burn building, but it'll end up saving about $168.
So we're actually decreasing our monthly spend.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Any questions? All right, then Parks and Rec is requesting to purchase a Polaris 570 utility vehicle from Dallin Truck and Tractor for $14,350. Was this a budgeted item?
Yes, it's a budgeted item, and of course, when we get to the first of the year, everything's gonna start going up again. So it's best just for us to go ahead and recommend to purchase this and be ready when the spring gets here, winter, spring, because we definitely could use it.
All right. Any questions from Billy on that? And the last item on the agenda is to request permission to seek bids on a maintenance building for Parks and Rec. Tell us about that, Barry and Billy.
Some of the things we were looking at was, we're displacing Park and Rec right now from their current facility, but they've got needs. I'll let Billy speak to that. But what we're looking at on the existing Park and Rec site towards the back over where Enterprise Paper Jantorial is, we own that property, and Billy and I are working on a configuration of a building that we could go ahead and bid out for a maintenance facility that they could use long term, and having a facility here in the central part of the city for their equipment. And the request is to allow us to put together in-house a performance specifications for that pre-engineered metal building, and having somebody come in and build that for us. Yeah, so good point. So we had originally, we were going to put this building in with the rec center when we bid this project out. However, when we saw the estimates for the rec center escalating through the design process, cut it out of the project early to say that was something we could punt down the road and possibly get a smaller contractor to take that project on later. May save us some money to do that. So it was part of the project that we originally were going to do, but due to the fact that we got good bid prices on that, and it's timing wise, it's a good time to put something like this on the street. So that's the reason for the request.
And that's why we bought that property 4 or 5 years ago.
That's correct. We invested in that property just for this future opportunity, and of course we're here now. And so,
And we just tore down.
We just tore the one we had down, and Shannon can attest this, that we've taken over a lot of public works facilities, and we're spread out using cargo containers and to put in, to store equipment and supplies and all that. So, and guys are scattered in different locations trying to stay operational while we build the new rec center, and we desperately need to go ahead and build this maintenance building.
Do y'all have this spec'd out already?
We talked about some preliminary sizes for that, and I reached out to a couple contractors and got some early estimates for it. We've got to refine what the sizes are, the door, the openings, that kind of stuff, but we're looking basically at a kind of essential building, just a metal building, large roll-up doors, and possibly a restroom in it.
But it'll be design build by the.
Yeah, so the intent of this is to do a performance spec. This is the kind of building we want. The bidder will have to provide the design, the footer design, the slab design, and build it. So it'll somewhat like a design build, but not really design build. It's more bid on performance specifications.
Gotcha. Any questions on that? All right, then we will have mayor's report and council member comments. Any other additions to the agenda? We do have well, I guess that's not even a new agenda item, but we will need to reintroduce 120622C with the amended language. Other than that, everybody good with it? All right, we have one other item on our work session agenda, which is just to briefly discuss our strategic planning for January 24th. Like I said earlier, this is our last council meeting of the calendar year, and we're going to continue what we did last year of January strategic planning. Just I wanted to kind of set the stage for y'all, kind of remind you how that meeting went, and I'll send y'all an email in the coming weeks, maybe with a little bit of homework. But you remember we started with a review of our organizational chart, and just I suspect we'll probably won't be making many changes, but the current structure we have was a product of the last two meetings. So we'll review that, make sure it's still serving the city well. Then we'll move into what we call a SWOT analysis, which is our strengths, our weaknesses, which are our internal issues. What are we good at? What are we bad at? Then our external opportunities and threats. So that's just more of an exercise for us to go through. We'll get those up on the big sticky notes. So that's really the biggest homework assignment, is for y'all to be thinking about what y'all think our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are, and then we'll use that information to start recalibrating this year will be a 3-year goal, which will be a 2025 goal, and then our 1-year goal, which is what we want to accomplish by the end of 2023. Obviously, we'll need to break that down into quarters, so we'll also set some priorities for Q1 of 23. And then I want to throw in, now that we've got the comprehensive plan, I realize we haven't adopted it, and the ink really isn't even dry on it yet, but I do want to start thinking of some longer range planning we can call it a 10-year goal or a 15-year goal, but kind of, when we grow up goal of, what enterprise needs to look like. And now we've got a real good, template of which to frame those conversations. So that'll be an addition this year, and that'll be something we need to do every year and make sure, and then, future councils can do it, make sure we're constantly pulling things off the shelf and getting them accomplished. So that's the way I see that. If everybody's comfortable with that format, that's the way that's Jonathan, did you have anything to add that you wanted to make sure we were prepared for at that meeting, which, we'll meet again before then.
Oh, I just wanted to make sure, while staff was here, going into next month, that if you had anything that you wanted us to bring to that meeting or be prepared to talk about, today at our staff meeting, we talked about, making sure that we also gave you feedback when you said something and reminded our staff, what happened and how this process works. That if you set a goal and it's not attainable in the time frame you're given to speak up, and make sure that, we're letting you know, hey, this isn't realistic. I know you want this next month, but it's going to take at least
Right.
6
Yeah. Because we're the good idea fairies.
Right.
That, yeah. I mean, we need y'all to ground us. Don't just sit there and take it. We need
Right.
feedback. We need input.
And we also talked about the ability, to push and try to stretch. That's not, don't just make them easy. If we let you know, hey, we can do that, no problem. Like sometimes it's okay to stretch. And then we talked about that it's okay not to hit our goals as long as we're keeping you informed about the progress and, roadblocks or obstacles or reasons that those goals aren't being met in a timely manner. So, just wanted to make sure if there was anything else that you wanted us to have at that meeting or get prepared for that meeting. I didn't want to go into next year and then have, less time to prepare for it. So,
Yeah. I mean, I would ask that they, come prepared with anything they think might be blind spots of ours, because we need to hear that too. I mean, y'all are the ones operating the city day in, day out. We just breathe in and out of here every 2 weeks. So make sure that y'all come prepared. That if something comes up that y'all think they need to know, please, or that they need to come prepared for, make sure they hear from you. So,
for this purpose, do you need to have any financials that you want to take a look at?
Beyond the monthly reports we're getting, I can't think of anything. I mean, I think we need to have at least a conversation about our debt picture. Make sure we're maybe dive into that a little bit about kind of a big picture where we're at. Make sure we all understand that. I think we're currently on like a 2040 time frame right now. Let's talk.
Yep.
Give us a little history lesson on that, I guess.
Okay.
Of where we are, just so we can kind of understand when we can start layering some of these projects in, how we can afford to do this stuff. I would like to focus on that a little bit.
Okay. We can do it.
And the time is, I have noon.
I think we have noon start, and then there was a conversation about bringing in some sandwiches or something at 11.
Yeah, I mean, we can assemble a little before and then start the meeting at noon.
Right.
So I'll leave that up to y'all to
I think we're
communicate.
planning at 11 to
11,
go
okay.
ahead and bring in.
And then the meeting
food.
start at 12.
That's right.
Everybody comfortable with that?
And we've got it configured to kind of have a horseshoe table set up for the council and whatever staff you have at the table, and then in the mayor, and then subsequently some chairs in the audience. I think we're planning right now to have 20 chairs, but we have more in the closet if we need it. But
Yeah, it'll probably be sufficient, but yeah, pull some out if we need to.
okay,
At the farmer's market.
right. And I think Barry and I just talked, but we'll have some more post-it notes, easels, markers, and then obviously the audio visual at the farmer's market. So you can pull up computers if you need to.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have anything else to discuss before we take a short recess? All right, we will recess until 6 o'clock.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. What you think? Sometime after the end of the year.
You got something back there? For me?
Share with your husband.
Oh no, I might give him two. But I swear I have to take him to work. I got it.
Aren't y'all festive? The most festive I've ever seen. That one right there. Oh,
And
gosh.
this one right here.
Come on. Come on. It's your favorite sweater?
That's one way to call it, Beverly. That's one name for it.
What leisure suit?
You heard I said that? So, Scotty, you heard I said it's your holiday. You got to tell them what I said. That don't even sound right. They need to do a play about it out at sea.
So Miss Lydia,
Yeah, pimping ain't easy during the holiday.
Yeah, and the problem with that kind of stuff is my wife can check my blood sugar. It's all GPS with it. It has an app, companion app. So she can check it. So she came in while ago and because she knew it was here 14 and a half hours or whatever. But,
On the back road by Rainer.
Summer, I knew it was you. I didn't even, I just heard you laugh, but I knew it was you. I didn't even have to talk about it. You didn't tell me beforehand. You could have sent me a text or something. You just threw me out. Are you too? When I saw you, what's your name? You're in the Christmas spirit, is you?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've got 6 o'clock. I will now call this meeting of the Enterprise City Council to order. Let the record show that all council members present. If you would please stand with me for the opening prayer and pledge of allegiance. Councilman Greg Padgett will give our prayer.
God, we thank you for this day. And thank you, Lord, as we celebrate Christmas this coming Sunday. You came to earth to die for our sins and save our souls. God, we pray today, Lord, that you would help us to remember each other and help each other as a community and do the things that you have called us to do. Help us tonight in this council meeting to make right decisions for our city. Lord, you touch the citizens of this city, great city, with your mighty blessings, your love, and your strength and your help. In Jesus' name we pray.
Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May I be seated. All right, Council, you should have in your packets the agenda that we discussed in the work session meeting prior to this meeting. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now consider the consent agenda. All matters listed within the consent agenda have been distributed to each member of the council for review, are considered to be routine, and will be enacted by one motion of the city council with no separate discussion. If separate discussion is desired on an item, that item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda by request of a member of the city council. I'll now call for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, I'll now recognize Mayor Cooper and Blake Moore from the Parks and Recreation Department, who will present certificates to members and coaches of the 5th and 6th grade ARPA volleyball team in recognition of their state championship season.
Mr. Mayor and Council, always a pleasure to be here in your presence. Usually when I show up, it means we won something, so that's good news. Bringing some Christmas cheer tonight for everyone. Here to talk about our Parks and Rec volleyball program, and I want to talk about the program for a minute. We started this program from scratch, from the ground up in 2018, and in 2020 we competed in our very first All-Star, and you guys will remember we were here in 2020 and brought home the very first state volleyball championship Enterprise. So me and Billy had the idea that we needed to host the state championship in Enterprise. So graciously, the Enterprise High School let us use their facilities, 5 courts going, and we had 25 teams from across the state of Alabama in 3rd and 4th, 5th and 6th, and 7th and 8th grade compete. And I want to take a minute to thank those that helped us build the program from the ground up, from Janie Wiggins with Deep South Volleyball and Enterprise High School, and Miss Sonia. We always talk about, you know, behind every man there's a really good woman.
That's right.
My woman's here tonight, my wife Hannah Moore. She has done more for the youth of Enterprise with volleyball than most anybody I know. So maybe that'll get me a good Christmas present.
It's gonna help. It's gonna help.
But want to recognize her tonight as well. But 25 teams, Mr. Mayor, across the state competed. Our 3rd, 4th grade team competed hard. They finished 2nd in the state. They were coached by Lee Miller, who's here tonight. And then we had our 5th and 6th grade. We were fortunate enough to have 2 teams in the finals or in the competition there. And so I'm nervous as it is when I have teams competing. And so I'm pacing back and forth, and I'm watching one team, and I can't see the other team. And so I don't know who's going to be in the finals. And so I know this team right here is in the final, and I'm sitting there, and in comes through the doors our other Enterprise team. So Enterprise versus Enterprise for the 5th and 6th grade state championships, and I couldn't be prouder. And I told them, hey, we got to give a trophy out tonight, but there was no losers. The only winner that night was the city of Enterprise. You just don't see that very much when at the end in the finals it's Enterprise versus Enterprise and one another city or town. So very proud of their accomplishments, and tonight we're going to honor our 5th and 6th grade ARPA 2022 state volleyball champions. So Mr. Mayor, I know you'd like to say a word or two.
First of all, I would like to thank you and Billy Powell, of course, for speaking here tonight. I'm sure you got some brownie for us. You give a good Christmas present.
I hope so.
Well, these young ladies, we're very proud of you, what you've done, represent the city. You know, whenever we look at sports around this town, whether it's the football team, basketball team, volleyball, whatever, now pickleball is coming along. You know, we're winners. And, you know, we know how to get out there and play fair, to be honest. We're good losers as well as good winners. But again, we are proud to see these young ladies up here. And they are getting the foundation. And when they get to the high school, they're going to be even bigger and better. So again, we want to thank the parents and all the supporters, as well as the coach, who had something to do with this. So this is Enterprise, the city of Proctor. Thank you.
Name is called. You'll come forward. Gracie Harrison. Ansley Milliner. Allie Henderson. Charlie Hodge. Lakin Griffin. Caroline Forehand. Holly Howell, she couldn't be with us tonight. Ella Kate Bowers. Assistant coach Candy Henderson. Mr. Mayor, we're going to rub this in on Lee a little bit. But 2-time state champion head coach Miss Bryn Milner. Mr. Mayor, I think the ladies here have a presentation for you. They were thinking, you know, we presented you with all kinds of balls and bats here lately, so something a little bit different that you don't have. But on behalf of the 5th and 6th grade state champions, they'd like to present you their state championship pictures signed by all the girls on the team.
Oh, thank you.
We're gonna get a picture, so y'all come on in.
Put some money inside.
Some of y'all come on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Blake and ladies. Congratulations. All right, Mayor, you can stay standing. We're going to recognize the Enterprise Chamber of Commerce Director Aaron Grantham, the Mayor, who will present awards to the float winners of the annual Christmas Parade held on Thursday, December 1st.
Well, good evening to everyone once again. We're thankful for you taking time out of your week to be here at the city council meeting. It's nice when we're recognized people, get more people here, don't we, sir? My name is Aaron Grantham. I'm the executive director for the Enterprise Chamber of Commerce. This is Rob Rhodes. He was our Christmas parade chairman this year. And first of all, we would just like to say thank you to everybody who participated in the parade and helped us to make it happen. Obviously, we couldn't do it without the mayor and council and all the departments of the city that make this happen. They truly helped us out tremendously. We can't thank you all enough for that, so thank you so very much. It is the largest Christmas parade in the Southeast, and I think we really made that statement true this year, sir. Over 173 units of this year's Christmas parade. We went live on TV for the first time, which was kind of amazing, thanks to Patriot Production Group and all of our sponsors. And so our judges really had a tough time deciding, you know, who were the judges best of the best. I think we're all winners because they all did an outstanding job. It truly was a sweet Christmas. But we can only give certificates out of certain categories, and there can only be one for each of those categories. So we are going to recognize those tonight. So this goes to Wicksburg Pageants for the best interpretation of theme. I'm not sure we have a representative here tonight. We call it everyone, but you know, it's the holidays and everybody's busy. But we're thankful for them. They have the cutest trees on their foot. It looked like broccoli leaves.
It was cute.
Next, we have Enterprise First United Methodist Church for the most original float. We have representatives from First United Methodist Church. They want to come on up and take a closer to the camera. I know we've got several members of the church in the air. Okay, perfect. We're gonna do a little brick and brand photo here. Thank you. Next goes to Army Aviation Foundation Museum for the most innovative. Yes, we do. It's Jingle. It's Jingle. They had a helicopter, it had a whole instrument panel on it, two little things. It was amazing. Very proud. Wonderful. Congratulations. Oh, yes. The best overall, and if you could see them working on this float almost all day long, it even had a little mishap along the way. It might have fallen off of the float on the way here, and still looked amazing. Yes. Murphy Family Restaurants, McDonald's, for the best overall. Woo!
was in the road 2 hours.
Yeah.
It was like the Happy Meal toy box, and Ronald McWeevil was the toy in the box. It was awesome. Congratulations. And the Spirit Award goes to the EHS Big Blue Marching Band. Hey, thank you guys so much. Congratulations. The judges really were kind of torn on some of these. We do have an honorable mention for the Tri-Community Volunteer Fire Department. Thank you, congratulations. That's it, sir. Thank you so much. We appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Mayor and Aaron and Rob, for such a wonderful parade. I know a lot of work goes into that. 170.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, is that everybody that's going to leave? All right, so we'll move on to Mayor again. You're going to present a plaque to Magistrate Teresa Warren for her outstanding contribution in bringing festivity to the city.
I would like to recognize Teresa Warren from the Magistrate's office. She is the who behind the Whoville inspired art painting on the windows here at City Hall. You probably noticed her work when you walked in the building this afternoon. You may have also seen it during the Halloween and Thanksgiving holiday. We just want to recognize Teresa's talent and thank her for helping spread holiday cheer, not only for the employees who work here, but for all who come to City Hall. Teresa, we have an appreciation award here. It says appreciation award presented to Teresa Warren at the Office of the Mayor, City of Enterprise, for your outstanding contribution in bringing festivity to Enterprise City Hall. And it says William E. Cooper, dated the 20th day of December, 2022. Again, congratulations on your work. May God bless you and continue to do what you're doing. I really didn't know you were that talented.
Thank you, Mayor. Congratulations. All right, we'll let the room clear out for a second. All right, so this next agenda item is called Privilege of the Floor. This is the time of the meeting where we allow members of the public who are present this evening to address the council for 3 minutes about anything they wish. So I will bring your attention to the fact that the first item in old business is a public hearing concerning the ordinance for short-term rentals. If you're here to address us about that, please hold your comments for that public hearing. Anything else you would need to address us during privilege of the floor? Is there anyone here that wishes to address? Yes, sir, Mr. Bench.
I have a little bit different topic tonight. I'm a little concerned. You know, we're spending a lot of money on recreational facilities throughout the city.
Use your speaker, please.
Okay. I have a little concern about the amount of money we're spending on recreational facilities throughout the city. I don't begrudge that we need a new facility like we are. I don't begrudge the pickleball courts, but you know, we have a large percent of the population lives off Rucker Boulevard or Highway 27 from the circle out to the city limits. What percentage of city recreational facilities are available to them in their neighborhoods? None. Not a single one. Not a walking trail, not a picnic table, not a park, nothing. So I would appreciate y'all's perhaps putting this in the future plans that somebody, because there's a lot of young people live there. How many elementary schools do we have in that area? Those kids would like a place to go too. You can't go downtown unless you have a mama or a daddy to drive you. We don't have public transportation. That's all I've got.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Finch. So I normally save my comments until the end, but I will say we actually met at 3 o'clock this afternoon to discuss our comprehensive plan. And inside of that plan highlights exactly the concept that you bring up, is that we need to work on our distribution of our parks and recreation facilities. So I'd love to, if you're around at the end of the meeting, I'll show it to you. I got it in my packet here. Yes, sir. Anybody else that wishes to address the council? All right, so we will move on to staff reports. Any staff reports that weren't able to address this in work session? All right, moving on to old business. We're going to have a public hearing in consideration of ordinance 120622C. Before we open the public hearing, I do need to reintroduce for the record ordinance 120622C with the following amendment to section 6F. Section 6 is the application for a permit. Section F will now read, upon business license application submission, the submission of an affidavit by operator affirming that the short-term rental shall be in compliance with safety regulations as outlined in this ordinance on or before July 15th, 2023. Thereafter, an affidavit affirming compliance with said safety regulations to be submitted upon annual business license renewal. This is, we discussed this in the work session prior, but this is simply cleaning up the language of 6F to more of what we had contemplated in our last meeting. I know all of you are on the same page with that. But basically, this gives applicants a grace period for the year 2023. Every subsequent year, there will be no grace period, which is exactly what we discussed at the last meeting. So now that we've got that properly introduced, I will now open the public hearing and ask for anybody who wishes to address the council regarding this ordinance. Is there anyone that wishes to do that? All right, we will close the public hearing. And in order for us to immediately consider this ordinance, since we made an amendment tonight, I will entertain a motion to suspend the rules so that we can immediately consider ordinance 120622C. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion we suspend the rules so we can immediately consider ordinance 120622C.
You second that, Eugene? All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion regarding suspending the rules? That's all we're voting on right now, suspending the rules. All right, hearing no discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries unanimously. All right, now we can consider ordinance 120622C as amended. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the ordinance.
I move that we adopt the ordinance.
Second.
With a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll move on to new business. We will now review and consider Resolution 12-2022, which is to amend the employee classification plan and sewer collection manager. I have now introduced and call for consideration of Resolution 12-2022, providing for an amendment to Ordinance 10-1601, which establishes the employee classification plan and salary schedule. The amendment calls for the elimination of the position of sewer collection supervisor, pay grade 19, and the creation of the position of sewer collection manager, pay grade 21. As discussed earlier, this is a budgeted change. So I'll entertain a motion to adopt this resolution 12-2022.
I move that we adopt the resolution 12-2022.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now review and consider Resolution 12-2022A, amend employee classification plan for wastewater treatment plant manager. Introduce and call for consideration of Resolution 12-2022A, providing for an amendment to Ordinance 10-1601, which establishes the employee classification plan and salary schedule. The amendment calls for the elimination of the position of wastewater plant and sewer system manager, pay grade 21, and the creation of the position of wastewater treatment plant manager, pay grade 21. As discussed earlier, this is also a budgeted change. I'll entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 12-2022A.
I make a motion we adopt Resolution 12-2022A.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now review and consider Resolution 12-2022B, which is to set a public hearing vacating the portion of East Brunson Street. I'll introduce and call for consideration of application and Resolution 12-2022B related to the partial vacation of East Brunson Street. The resolution sets a public hearing as to the partial vacation for February 7th, 2023 at the regularly scheduled council meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 12-2022B.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 12-2022B. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll now review and consider Resolution 12-2022C, which sets a public hearing vacating a portion of Hollis Street. I introduce and call for consideration of application and Resolution 12-2022C related to the partial vacation of Hollis Street. The resolution sets a public hearing as to the partial vacation for February 7th, 2023 at the regularly scheduled council meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 12-2022C.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now review and consider Resolution 12-2022D to set a public hearing vacating the portion of Swenson Street. I introduce and call for consideration of an application and Resolution 12-2022D related to the partial vacation of Swenson Street. The resolution sets a public hearing as to the partial vacation for February 7th, 2023 at the regularly scheduled council meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 12-2022D.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll now consider approving temporary closure for portions of streets, East Brunson, Hollis, and Swenson Streets. I'll now call for a motion to approve the temporary closure of a portion of East Brunson Street, Hollis Street, and Swenson Street as per the maps attached to resolution number 12-2022B, 12-2022C, and 12-2022D. This is related to the demolition and construction preparation for the new Recreation and Aquatic Center. These temporary closures will stay in effect until such time as the portions of those streets are permanently vacated. I'll entertain a motion to adopt this temporary closure of portions of the streets, East Brunson, Hollis, and Swenson Streets.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll now consider authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with McKee and Associates regarding a pickleball court design. I call for a motion to accept the proposal from McKee and Associates Architects Incorporated for professional services related to a new pickleball complex, and further authorize the mayor to execute the agreement with review from the city administrator and city attorney. The agreement is for 7.6% of construction costs, but not to exceed $45,600, and includes design, bidding, construction administration, and project closeout phases for 8 new pickleball courts to be constructed at the Enterprise State Community College campus. I'll entertain a motion to approve this execution of the agreement by the mayor.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll now consider authorizing the mayor to execute a lighting services agreement from Alabama Power at the Central Fire Station. I call for a motion to authorize the mayor to execute a 5-year agreement with Alabama Power Company to provide 8 LED fixtures, poles, wiring, energy, and maintenance at Central Fire Station at a monthly cost of $432.80. As explained by Chief Davis in the work session, this will actually be a reduction in cost because we're going to a more energy efficient bulb and removing a fixture. So I'll entertain a motion to approve this authorization.
So moved.
Motion to approve it.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll now consider the request of permission to purchase equipment of a Polaris utility vehicle from Parks and Recreation. I introduce and call for consideration of request from Billy Powell, Director of Community Services and Recreation, to purchase one Polaris 570 utility vehicle from Dowling Tractor Company at a cost of $14,350. The equipment is a budgeted item in the FY23 budget. Do I hear a motion to approve this request?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll now consider a request permission to seek bids on a maintenance building from Parks and Recreation. I introduce and call for consideration of request from Billy Powell, Director of Community Services and Recreation, to seek bids for a new maintenance building to be located near the new rec center. The building will be located on the existing property and used to store Parks and Recreation equipment and supplies. Do I hear a motion to approve this request?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the request to seek bids. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mayor, you have a report for us?
Thank you, Mr. President. All city offices were closed at 3 p.m. this Thursday and remain closed Friday and Monday so that our employees can enjoy the holidays with their families. The trash pickup schedule will change due to the holidays. Please check our website and social media for a detailed list. We hope you all are enjoying the new lights in Water Tower along the Bowies Circle. We had a dedication ceremony last night and the lights were turned on for the very first time. If you haven't seen it, you need to go by and just take a look. Beautiful. Beautiful. Also, they've started the demolition of the Gerald Brown Rec Center. Construction on the new rec center will start in January 2023 and will be an exciting year. This and many other projects on the horizon. We are expecting some very cold weather here. The temperature this week will somewhat be, like we would say, cold. Please stay safe and warm and check on your neighbors. If you know someone looking for help, encourage them to call 211 for available resources. Finally, I want to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and a safe and a happy New Year. Thank you.
Ms. Rich?
Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight, and thank you, Mr. Bench, for always coming and bringing tangible, real concerns to us. We appreciate that. If there was an award that we could give for best attendance of any citizen, you would probably get it. But we appreciate you. And I want to say it's the season of giving, and our department heads and our staff, they give so much to ensure that our city hall runs smooth, our departments, our residents have everything, that they need, and it's just really appreciated. So just want to thank you all for all that you do for our city, and I hope everyone has a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Mr. Goolsby?
It's always great to see a group of young people get to come tonight and be recognized for their accomplishments. And again, like Sonia says, wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you for coming.
Mr. Paget?
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Scotty?
Okay. Well, again, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for all our citizens watching online. It's always great to bring in the young ladies and anybody from the rec center, recognize them for awards. It's outstanding. And congratulate Teresa. It's being creative, and just every time I walked in the building, it was really neat to see. I can't wait to see what 2023 brings for this city, for this council, for our city workers. It's just going to be a great year. Again, I invite those folks to our strategic planning meeting, January 24th. Don't miss it, okay? And again, thank you to our city workers. Merry Christmas and a very happy New Year. Thank you for everything you do for the city. Thank you to our citizens.
Yeah, so ditto what everybody said. Certainly congratulations to everybody who was recognized tonight. What the mayor said, everybody try to stay warm this week and get your outside water faucets bundled up so we don't have any pipes freezing. But Mr. Bench, if you got a few minutes, I'd love to show you, because you're exactly right. I don't think anybody up here disagrees with you. With that, I will adjourn, and everybody have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We'll see you next year. We've got several things to